Good afternoon, everyone. The meeting will now come to order. Hello, I'm Donna Savigny, President of the Board of Education, and I would like to welcome you to the November 11th, 2020 board meeting. In keeping with the board's commitment to open communication with the community, this meeting is being streamed live on the CCPS website at www.carrollk12.org and broadcast live on Channel 21. We are also recording this meeting so that it can be accessed on demand on our website and broadcast throughout the month on Channel 21. This will be a hybrid meeting in which board members are present in the boardroom. However, staff will be participating virtually. Due to COVID-19 restrictions, the public will not be able to attend the meeting with the exception of those who wish to speak during citizen participation. Citizen participation is scheduled on the agenda for approximately 5 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. Speakers will be allowed in the meeting room individually for the allotted 3 minutes to address the board. Citizens who wish to speak must adhere to the social distancing guidelines and safety precautions we have previously publicized in communications about public comment for this meeting. Citizens must wear a mask while in the building and also when addressing the board. The Board of Education will also continue taking public comment related to tonight's agenda items through alternate means. Citizens not appearing in person for public comment can write to the board through email or U.S. mail. Comments received will be posted on the website. For board members and staff who are participating in the virtual meeting, I would remind us all to silence our cell phones and other devices around us that the microphones may pick up. Also, we should each silence our microphones when we are not speaking. Now, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, board members, I need a motion for the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Battaglia, seconded by Dr. Dorsey. Board members, any comments or additions or changes? Okay, not hearing any, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, can I get a verbal aye, please?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we will move on to the approval of the minutes. First up, I need a motion for the approval of the, hold on a second, make sure I get the right date, the unapproved board meeting minutes for October 7th, 2020.
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Dorsey,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Kyler. Okay, board members, any comments on the October 7th minutes? Ms. Lucido, I do have two comments. In the very first sentence where it says we convened a virtual Board of Ed updates meeting, I think that should say a hybrid virtual Board of Education updates meeting.
Okay.
And then under the second paragraph, still on the first page, under public participation, we have, this is under the health officer section. It says the cases per week in Carroll County went up. We are at a 5.1% positivity rate per 100,000. I would like to say according to the JHU calculation and 1.5% according to the state calculation.
Okay, got it.
Okay. Board members, any other comments on the October 7th minutes? No? Okay, then I will call for the vote on the minutes as amended. All those in favor, can I get a verbal aye, please? Aye. Any opposed? It passes unanimously, thank you. Okay, board members, now we need a motion to approve the unapproved board meeting minutes for October 14th, 2020.
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Dorsey,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Battaglia. Board members, any comments or revisions?
On page 19, in the second to last paragraph, can we take out these college-bound athletes did prefer option 2 with the December 7th start date? Can we strike that sentence, please?
Okay, was that an inaccurate depiction?
Yeah.
Devanshi?
Um,
Okay.
I didn't specifically say that they preferred either option.
Okay. Okay. So, Ms. Lucido, do you see where she is referring to?
Yes, I did get
Okay.
that. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Devanshi. Okay, board members, any other comments? No? Then with that, I will call for the vote on the minutes as amended. All those in favor, can I get a verbal aye, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, and board members, now we will move directly into the first set of public participation. Ms. Herbert.
To have an orderly presentation of comments by the public, the following guidelines apply. Speakers will be allowed in the boardroom individually for the allotted 3 minutes to address the board. Citizens who wish to speak must adhere to the social distancing guidelines and safety precautions we have previously publicized in communication about public comments for this meeting. All citizens must wear a mask in the building and when addressing the board. Citizens not appearing in person for public comment can write to the board through email or U.S. mail. Citizen participation is not intended to be a question and answer session. However, if citizens have specific questions, the superintendent will assign a staff member to make contact during the board meeting to arrange a time to respond to questions. The superintendent board reserve the right to correct misinformation presented as factual after the conclusion of the citizen participation period. Statements to the board should relate to a recent agenda item and an agenda item that is expected to appear in the near future, or a matter of general policy over which the board has authority. Personnel matters, pending appeals, the action or statements of individual staff, or items related to employee negotiations are not appropriate topics and may not be discussed. It is the intent of the board to allow all citizens an opportunity to speak. Therefore, the board has scheduled time on the agenda for citizen participation at 5 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. The board reserves the right to limit the number of speakers on a particular topic so that all topics may be addressed. If 30 minutes has passed and there are citizens who have not addressed the board, additional time may be allotted later in the meeting. Comments are limited to 3 minutes or less. When the allotted time expires, the speaker is permitted to complete a sentence and return to the audience. The public may not display signs or posters during the board meetings. In lieu of signs, or if you're unable to complete your comments in the allotted time, individuals are encouraged to submit remarks to the board in writing. And our first person tonight is Tony Roman.
Putting my hands behind my back so I don't touch the podium, but a lot of years of just doing that, I got to restrain myself. Good evening to Superintendent, board members, Commissioner Frazier, Mr. Singer, anybody else that's out there. I thank you for giving us this opportunity again to talk to you face to face. I have communicated with all of you and some of you more than once over the past week, and I appreciate that you are open and willing as elected members of our society and our community. I live in the county, I live in Westminster. I'm a 35-plus year veteran of the school system here, so I have a vested interest in its future and the care of our students. This is not a good time for our nation, for our state, for our county. Our numbers in dealing with COVID are going in the wrong direction, and it's not a surprise. We were told this was going to happen. Being a social studies teacher, I look and show my children what's happening in Europe and tell them, you know, this is what's coming next. We're the next wave from here. So it's not a surprise. And the question is, how do we deal with it? And as a nation, we have not done a good job in dealing with the science, in dealing with the behaviors. The governor is now going to have a press conference again tomorrow, the third in a week, because he's not happy with the direction and the continuing numbers increasing, and he will probably offer more restrictions and more programs and things to try to stem what is occurring. And that's the biggest thing. In the Midwest, things are flowing, and what is it for? Because they didn't pay attention to what was happening. 2, 4, 6, things escalate. And do we want to be in that position? So I'm asking you to consider, what are we going to do? That hybrid needs to be put into a stop at the moment, and we need to look at what are the favorable conditions in which to bring it back. We have had our situations, programs stop, teachers in quarantine, students in quarantine. It's only going to get worse as community numbers keep shooting up. You know, Mr. Singer talked about being in 35 below. You know, we're 3 times those numbers now. So I implore you to tonight discuss, consider, and decide that it's not a problem enjoying the rest of the areas around us, to just temporarily put a stop to things until we can determine when it'll be safe for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming tonight, Tony.
Catherine Henn?
Hi, I'm Catherine Henn, kindergarten teacher at Manchester Elementary School. It is so nice to see everyone again. I hope you all have been well during these very challenging times. President Savigny, Vice President Herbert, congratulations on your unofficial re-election. I look forward to continuing to work with you, although I have to admit I am not sure how much longer I will be teaching. I do not think I can continue working at this pace. I have had hard jobs in my lifetime. Working as a bartender at Last Call is hard. Working retail on Christmas Eve is hard. Working with emotionally challenged adolescents in a residential co-ed facility is even harder. But nothing I have ever done is as hard as what you are requiring teachers and staff to do now. We are exhausted, physically, mentally, and emotionally. We do not look forward to coming to work each day. We are writing lessons that have to be delivered in 2 completely different ways. We are teaching students in 2 completely modes of instruction. Without the technology, equipment, or personnel to make either mode of instruction successful, no student is getting the education they need, deserve, or have a right to. If the virtual mode of instruction is here to stay, then you need to create a virtual school. Hire virtual teachers. Give them the technology and equipment they need, develop an online curriculum, and allow them to teach only virtual students. The amount of instructional time teachers would have with their A/B day cohorts would increase, giving the students in school the extended time they need to learn the curriculum, even while attending just 2 days a week. Wednesdays could be student support, individual meeting time, or maybe even time for teachers to plan and collaborate. CCPS cannot sustain the pace at which they are working. Principals are giving out lunches. Principals and vice principals are covering recess. Instructional assistants are being pulled from their responsibilities, like assisting in the kindergarten, to be teachers or classroom monitors. The front office staff is being asked to help with lunch and recess coverage because their IAs are being pulled into classrooms. Custodians are working overtime to keep the classroom clean. Supervisors are covering classes, as well as other support right here from central office. How will CCPS cover buildings as of tomorrow when the high school opens? Nobody can keep up this pace. In addition, the students are overwhelmed, tired, and confused. There are children who have had 5 and 6 teachers in the last 4 weeks. We as a system have to do better. If all virtual students were in a virtual school and the classroom teacher only had to teach the 6 to 13 students in the physical classroom, imagine all the education all the children would be receiving. As we navigate
Finish your
this new
thoughts,
world of
please.
education, please consider finding ways to eliminate the impossible workload that hybrid has created. I have some comments from additional staff members.
You can leave it, give it right there. Thank you, Ms. Henn.
Thank you, Ms. Hen.
Our next speaker, Gary Foote.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent Lockhart, Commissioner Frazier, and members of the public. My name is Gary Foote, and quite frankly, I'm wondering why I'm here tonight. I'm not going to tell you anything that you don't already know. The numbers that you have in front of you concerning the pandemic, the situation we have here in Carroll County speaks for themselves. What can I possibly add? But I stood out in the rain anyway, and I will repeat again all the points you know that I'm going to make. 35 community cases were reported yesterday. That is the number of cases per week that was the target set for reopening. We are on pace for setting another record, not something that no one is particularly proud of. We haven't been anywhere close to 35 cases a week in 2 months. So why are we planning to open high schools tomorrow? Perhaps you wish to be like pastry makers, who give the people what they want in the moment but sacrifice everyone's long-term well-being because it's easier to be that way. I urge you to think again. Who among us cannot be troubled by these numbers? And if you aren't, then what part of the truth are you willfully choosing to ignore? I guess we can take comfort in the fact that only one case of in-school transmission has been reported so far. Are we really sure that that's valid? And what happens when older students start returning? I received a letter from a parent today worrying that older students might not really follow social distancing guidelines. High school students do not naturally desire to remain 6 feet apart. And no, I don't think any one of us wants to become the mask police. You're right. I have nothing to say here today that you couldn't have read for yourself in this week's Carroll County Times. So I ask again, why do I need to be here to tell you what you already know? Please consider the safe and sensible solution. The health of our entire community depends on it. The University of Maryland can't keep a COVID outbreak from occurring among even a limited number of athletes who have every reason to follow safety precautions. Why do you think our school system will be any more successful?
Thank you. And our last speaker, Paul Christensen.
Good evening, members of the board and Dr. Lockhart. My name is Paul Christensen. I'm a 7-year teacher. I spent the last 6 years at Northwest Middle School. Thank you for having me to speak tonight. Wanted to talk a little bit about the logic and the rationalism of this, because I know this is a very emotional topic and there are high emotions on both sides. To go through this, we should look around us. Dorchester County was at 36 cases per 100K several weeks back. When schools were closed, that was halved. Harford County, currently at about 19, and you'll have to forgive me if my numbers are slightly off because these are from a couple days ago. Harford County, 19 cases per 100K, and they're rising. They announced that they are ending in-person instruction as of Monday. Allegheny County, 55 cases per 100,000. They are shut down. They are ending in-person instruction as of before Monday. Washington County announced today 22 cases per 100,000. They are ending in-person instruction effective Monday. We are currently at 15 cases per 100,000, so we are in a better position than a lot of these other districts. We have time to avoid getting in a worse position than these other districts. I implore you to please follow the statistics when making this decision. Hospitalizations, they were at 281 statewide on September 20th. We are currently standing at over 800 hospitalizations, which is well short of the 1,711 hospitalizations that there were last spring. However, we are reporting 100 plus hospitalizations for the first time since June. I expect that number will worsen. I have followed this relatively closely, if you cannot tell. Maybe a few cases have been documented in schools, but the question that I would ask is, to what degree do we have surveillance over the cases that are being transmitted in schools? To what degree do we know the asymptomatic spread? Without widespread testing, we do not know the level of spread that is going on in our schools. For every case that is identified, according to the Oliver Wyman model, which is one of the most accurate models forecasting deaths in the United States right now, 2.2 cases are missing for every case we find. So what to take? A lot of the rural areas that were less affected earlier in the pandemic are going to be more affected later in the pandemic. To end with some good news, Pfizer just came out with a vaccine you may have heard, 90% plus effectiveness. Moderna is using a similar technology. They have results to be reported later this month. I'm hoping for the best, and I hope you all delay until those vaccines are available to the general public, so we all may have the benefits of the miracle of modern medicine. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming tonight.
And that ends our public participation for tonight.
Okay, and we will move on to employee groups.
Employee groups.
Good evening, Superintendent Lockhart, members of the Board of Education, and Commissioner Frazier. I'm Teresa Basler McCullough, President of CCEA, Carroll County Education Association, who represents the dedicated, hardworking teachers, counselors, RNs, speech-language therapists, OTs, and PTs, who, after Governor Hogan's press conference, are anxiously waiting for a metrics review. We are hopeful that the safety and health of all Carroll County Public Schools employees and students is top priority when assessing the hybrid plan. First, I'd like to thank Dr. Dorsey for accepting the opportunity to shadow a teacher that was offered in a letter submitted to each Board of Education member and Dr. Lockhart. The letter requested asynchronous Wednesdays as a solution to allow some relief to our educators that are spending countless hours planning and preparing for the workload during this hybrid plan. Asynchronous Wednesdays would also provide our students with some catch-up time. We have over 70 educators willing and ready for a visit from a board member and Dr. Lockhart during hybrid delivery to observe exactly what takes place in this virtual mode. Contact me and we'll be glad to make the arrangements. And Ms. Mystery, I am sure something can be arranged for you if you'd like to shadow an elementary or middle school teacher. Right, Dr. Lockhart? For months, unfortunately, meeting after meeting, we have been experiencing union and teacher bashing. As a 36-year veteran teacher and union member, I am prepared to educate this evening because that is what I do. When you bash a union, you are criticizing 1,370 educators. You are also attacking a group that has worked diligently when their world was turned upside down since March 13th. This same group was engaged in 21,000 hours of virtual learning, professional development that they signed up for on their own during the summer. This same group, who since the beginning of the school year have consistently been working 60-plus hours work weeks to address the needs of Carroll County children. When you lash out at the union, you are slamming a group of educators who have partnered with several community groups. Our union dips ice cream at the local Carroll County 4-H FFA Fair. We walk in the City of Westminster's Fall Fest Parade. We enter a wreath in the Carroll Arts Center Festival of Wreaths. We participate in the African American Read-In. And we are currently getting ready to donate 40 giving boxes to a local food bank in December. We sponsor the annual Read Across America event, which is one of the largest in the nation, providing hundreds of youth with guest readers, some of them right here in this room, free books, activities, and games surrounded around literacy. We have also tutored at the Boys and Girls Club after putting in a day's work educating our own students. I realize some people aren't familiar with the work we do, and that is exactly why I'm delivering the facts and educating this evening. A union also conducts calls to action as the need arises to unite in solidarity to show support. We compose letters, write emails, and make phone calls to elected officials. We rally in person, if possible, or unify in a peaceful car rally, which one was held on July 29th. We met with resistance from an adversarial group who had every right to be there. But what wasn't okay was a representative from that group screaming to our car drivers, and I quote from the July 30th edition of the Carroll County Times, "You are an abomination. You are an abomination. You're a disgrace," unquote. Not to mention obscenities and other inappropriate comments this individual and a few others from the group made to our educators, union members, in cars as they drove by the group. We have been accused of bullying and harassing the Board of Education. This behavior from the person is the epitome of bullying and harassment. This group has made statements that they would like to stand beside or with teachers. But with all the ridiculing, anti-union statements, and acts like this, no thank you. Hopefully, you now have a better understanding of our union. In the words of our president-elect, teachers, it's not what we do, it's who we are. In closing, we are your child's teacher, and we are the union. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa. That's it? Okay, so we have no other employee groups this evening. All right, board members, with that, we will move on to section 3, the COVID-19 updates. So, Dr. Lockard, I believe Mr. Singer is on the line.
That's
Good
correct.
evening, board members. I don't know, do you have, and I'm hearing an echo, but do you have the slides on your end that you want to share, or should I share them through my computer?
We have them here, Mr. Singer, so Bob's going to put them up momentarily.
Okay. You know, I guess I'll just start off by saying I've been very hopeful as we've gone through this pandemic that I'd have good news for you every time we have one of these board meetings. But I think that, you know, we've all seen the governor's press conference. We all understand where numbers are heading, both nationally and locally. And at one point in time, you know, we had some of the best numbers in the state, and we were very fortunate because of that. And you know, I was very encouraged. But we've slipped. We're kind of in the middle of the pack now, statewide, and the numbers are not going the direction we want them to be. Go ahead and move to the next slide, please. So as you can see, our total cases per week, we hit a record this week with the number of cases that we had. Not a good record, highest number of cases we've had since the pandemic started. Our total cases per day, and this is as of last Saturday, and as we get into some of these other slides, I'll share even more current data with you. We reached 12.7 cases per 100,000. And the positivity rate, while we haven't reached 5 yet here in Carroll County, as of last weekend, we were at 4.2%. The ICU bed usage had popped up a couple of weeks ago, and we were a little concerned about that. The ICU bed usage, while it's not up right now, I do want to share with you that I've talked to Jared Hoover, the president of the hospital, and they do have a far higher census overall in the hospital of number of COVID patients that they've admitted. They're not to the point where they're overly stressed yet, but they're seeing certainly seeing an uptick in COVID cases. We haven't seen any community deaths over the last couple of weeks. I guess that's a good thing to highlight. So if we move on to the next slide. The only comment I'll make about this is I know when we started talking about school reopening and whatnot, that a lot of the board members were like, well, we're kind of towards the bottom end of that higher risk of transmission in schools. And this week we stand very much towards the upper end of that higher risk of transmission in schools category as far as the CDC model would have us. I would not be surprised if we approached or possibly got into that highest risk of transmission according to the CDC guidelines within the next week, because our case numbers are continuing to increase. Today, again, we had over 40 cases. I thought we were going to reach 50. I think it's somewhere in the mid 40s as far as positive cases just today. Next slide, please. And this is the one that kind of, I don't know, this is the state's metrics they put out there, and I thought they were pretty liberal as far as school reopening was concerned. But as of last week, we were, end of last week, we were at 12.7 cases per 100,000 and a 4.2 positivity rate. As of yesterday, we were at 4.2 on the positivity rate and a 13.8 case rate. And as of today, at the end of the day, well, actually, as of the end of the day yesterday, the statistics that I have for today, we've reached a 4.5% positivity rate and a 14.8 case rate per 100,000. And I can promise you that tomorrow we're going to be over 15 because the number of cases we had today will put that average over 15. And we're going to be approaching that 5% positivity number, which essentially puts us off the chart for what the state's guidance is with schools reopening. I'll say through this pandemic, I've tried to make sure I've balanced the risk versus the mission of the schools when advising you all on what to do. With our current metrics, there's no way that I can support further reopening at this time because of where the numbers are going. They're essentially not in any way supporting further reopening of schools. I will tell you that we're struggling. I know your nursing staff are struggling to try to manage the cases that we have with the elementary and middle schools being open right now. I have a nurse who worked in the emergency department and is very good at dealing with frantic situations, but she's been frantic all week just trying to make sure that we have a handle on these case numbers. And I'm not saying that this is happening because of transmission in schools. What I'm saying is there's so many cases going on out in the community, and there's so much community transmission right now that it's making it very difficult and if not impossible for us to manage some of it. And I can tell you that if high schools reopen tomorrow, I don't know, well, I'm pretty sure that we're not going to be able to fully support contact tracing within the high schools because I've had to refer some of our community cases out to the call center that the state has a contract with NORC because we can't keep up with the number of cases that we're being expected to manage.
Mr. Singer, would you support schools being hybrid until next Wednesday?
And what are we gonna do? Are we gonna meet again next Wednesday and talk about that? I'm not sure where the numbers are gonna go because right now all we've seen is seemingly increases in numbers every day.
I'm just thinking that way we give families just that little bit of time to make arrangements really fast. If they
You're
have
talking
1
about-
week.
You're talking about going, well, I can tell you, it's difficult for, we'll do what we can. You guys have to make whatever decision is that you need to make, but I certainly would not recommend bringing the high schools back tomorrow. And I realize what a time crunch, and I think this all, if you look at the chart, I mean, obviously we were at 5.5 2 weeks ago. We hit 8.6, and now we're at 12.7. And I'm telling you, we're going to be over 15 tomorrow, and next week it's going to be higher than that. So I think this kind of caught everybody a little bit by surprise because Maryland had been doing so well, and Carroll County had been doing better than most of the other jurisdictions in the state of Maryland. So all of a sudden have this many cases going on. It's really, ultimately it's your decision as to what to do. I'm telling you right now, I don't have the resources to contact trace the high schools because I'm already referring out cases to the call center through the state because we can't keep up with the caseload.
Hey, Mr. Singer, I have a question for you. I guess I'm hoping you're going to have a slide on probable cases coming up. If you added the probable cases, what we have right now, what would our positivity rate be, and what would the rate per 100,000 be? Do you have that?
I didn't calculate that, but if you go into I think it might be on the next slide, or it might be another 2 slides down. Can we have the next slide, please? That's the overall number of cases in the community. Next slide. And I think the next slide's got the cases that you were talking about. So we had, I could certainly calculate you a positivity rate or I didn't do it, and it would take me a little time to put it together, but we have 29 additional cases that we're not counting. So, obviously those are, and we talked about why we're not counting them because they're not considered to be confirmed cases. These are rapid tests that have not been confirmed with a PCR because the state does not consider those to be confirmed cases. And that's a lot of additional cases that it's kind of where we were looking at having a target for reopening school was a number around 35 at one point in time. And to have 29 additional cases that really aren't figured into the numbers, that is very significant.
Right. The reason I bring that up is because 29 is a very high number, and it's something that the board certainly should consider when they're thinking about what to do with the school system with all the cases. That's the only reason I bring it up, because realistically, in my mind, I know that's not the way it's reported out, but if you had the symptoms, you went to your doctor, you got tested, and the rapid test came back as positive, you probably have COVID. So you can look at that as being a positive thing, or positive or negative, because how you look at it, but being an additional 29 cases on top of the ones that were already reported, that's an awful high number. That's the only reason I bring that up.
Yeah, and Commissioner, we are contact tracing all those people, so they are essentially counting. They're not counting in the data, but they're being worked just like any other case. So, I know for a fact today we had 12 additional of those rapid test cases that were not PCR confirmed. So, the number of these cases that are very, very likely positive COVID cases, the state considers them to be what they call presumptive positive, and well over 90% of these cases are going to be positive. I think the data is up there around 98 or 99% of these people that have symptoms that are tested with a rapid test are actually COVID positive. That is a very significant number.
Commissioner Frazier, is there any plans for the commissioners to roll back the stage 2 or to put any more stricter restrictions on in the county?
As of right now, we haven't talked about that, but we do have a meeting tomorrow that might come up in tomorrow's meeting. But as of right now, no, we have not talked about that.
I will admit the one thing I am struggling with is the positivity really, it's not really the kids. It's adults that have created the mass uptick between, it's particularly the 45 to 65 age group.
Right, because
Well,
I know we're putting a
that's
dashboard together for the schools, right? And Dr. Lockard, that's going to be ready tomorrow or by Friday?
Yeah, that is planning, we're planning on having that going live tomorrow. I can't give you an exact
Okay.
time, but tomorrow, yes.
Okay, and we're seeing relatively low numbers of cases from the schools, and so to your point, Ms. Pataglia, it's not being driven by the schools. So the part that I think that we're struggling with is closing the schools as being the first and the only action that we're looking at taking, because that's not going to
That's not going to change anything.
It's not going to change the
Because
numbers.
if the bars are still allowed to be open, people are still having gatherings outside, that's creating the numbers. It's not the kids. So,
Well,
and I
I'd say
struggle
it's
with
not
that.
Kids, I don't agree with that statement overall. I do agree that that the transmission's not, we're not seeing high rates of transmission in schools, but we've seen, I have to go on to the slide that has it, but we're seeing
If I could comment
large
on that
number
first,
of,
Ed.
pediatric cases showing up now, and the places they're getting at are at people's houses, working outside the home, or in generally eating indoor in restaurants. So the biggest problem we saw around Halloween time was, and I've got specific contact tracing information related to some people that are high school age that went to specific parties, and we had large number of people get COVID-19 because they went to a party. I mean, in one of the cases, we had 9 cases that were related to a specific party.
And I think,
I can't get into specific locations or anything of that nature, but you know that's what's driving the numbers to go up. And honestly, I agree with you. I think that, but it's tough because the economy's hurting and everybody's hurting. You know, figuring out where the priorities are, we've got to give somewhere. And right now, though, the cases are at a point where it's just unmanageable to continue to reopen more and try to figure out how we're going to track these cases.
Yeah, Mr. Singer, one of the things the distinctions that I'd like to make, though, is that the spike in cases, we're hearing a lot of feedback and emails and things from the community saying the reason for the spike in cases was because schools were opened, and that's not really the case. I mean, when you look at the numbers and you look at the dashboard that we're developing, I mean, and you kind of track it, the spike wasn't coming from the schools being opened. It looks like could it have anything to do with early voting and election day? I mean, I know that Ms. Herbert and I spent a lot of time out there over the last couple of weeks, and there were long lines of people waiting in line to vote for
Not social distancing.
and not social distancing. So, and the fact that this has been a very quick spike. I mean, as you were saying, the time frame on this is very tough from logistical perspective, right? Because we just got information over the last day or two that we were in a range where we thought it was going to be acceptable, and then all of a sudden it just wasn't. And it seems like that big spike. Could the timing be due to early voting and election day?
I really don't think it has a lot to do with the elections, because we've actually had one. I'm only aware of one case that we had that was and contact tracing that we've done that were related to the elections. I would tend to say this is quite related to where we were seeing our biggest problems with were gatherings around Halloween, very large gatherings, and very large gatherings at people's homes for parties, birthday parties, hay rides, things of that nature, and some of it in sports. We've seen some transmission. So while it's not being driven by schools, I don't think it was driven by the elections. And when we did contact tracing with the one case we had with the elections, we found out you may have had contact with a few people who were in front of or behind you in line if you weren't socially distanced in line. But the person that we were contact tracing really only wound up with a few contacts related to the election activity. And it's the only people who had sustained contact with a large number of people were probably the staff with each other, not so much people who went out to vote. Because you think about how the lines were, you had people in front of you and people behind you, and if the people in front of you or behind you might have had COVID, you might have had close contact with them for 15 minutes, but the rest of that long line, you didn't have contact with any of those other people. So I don't think we're seeing the spread is because of the election. I think it's more because of these gatherings where people are having prolonged contact with a lot of people in a small area for an extended period of time.
I was just going to add to your point about the community spread. The indirect implications for us as schools is on any given day, and I'll just use staff as an example. So while we do not have a significant number at all of currently of staff members who have tested positive, what we do wrestle with each and every day is upwards of 100 people who are identified as either a close contact of somebody in the community or a close contact of a COVID-like illness. And we all know, Mr. Singer and I talk about this all the time, we pull the remaining hairs we have out of our head. That doesn't mean they have COVID, it just means that's what we're required to follow right now per Maryland Department of Health, MSDE guidance. And that puts us at a real disadvantage in our schools. We talked a lot 2 months ago about trying to staff our schools. And then you add a lot of people having to be out who physically can't be there. It makes it pretty challenging.
I know one thing I really do struggle with, though, is because of the actions of some, and I'm not making whether it's staff or anything else. Please understand that. But the age group that's here, the 45 to 64, that's caused the massive increase. I feel like we're being asked to almost basically punish the children because of adults in the community. And I know, Mr. Singer, you said about some of the high schoolers were having parties. I don't think their behavior was appropriate, but honestly, I can't blame them. They're bored. They're not even being held accountable anymore to this point. There is no accountability of, I'm going to have to go play my sport, so I shouldn't be drinking, I shouldn't be smoking, I shouldn't be doing things I'm not supposed to be doing. So our high schoolers are currently in a place where there's zero accountability for them. So they're going to do things that they shouldn't be doing on a normal basis. And I think that's also part of this. And I think that's why I asked you if you could give us to at least Wednesday. And I think just those 2 days for Group B and those 2 days for Group A in a high school, it's that tiny bit of interaction that they'll be like, maybe I need to behave a little bit better. Because even as a community, I think we need to ask our community too to please be careful what they're doing, because in turn, we're being asked to punish the kids if everything else is still gonna be at 50%. And I'm sorry, that is not right. That we are gonna take away from our kids and continue to allow restaurants at 50%, entertainment centers, theaters, whatever else. Bad behavior is gonna be able to continue.
Cara, I don't mean to cut you off, but I actually have a slide at the end that talks about the things that we as a community need to do to be able to get back on track with the schools.
Right, and Mr. Singer, I do just want to, and to your point, Ms. Pataglia, I want to reiterate, you're seeing that it's coming from parties and social gatherings in the community. It's not being spread or not seeing transmission in the schools. So I think that's something that we need to reiterate, because there are a lot of folks in the community that are thinking the spike was coming from schools reopening, and that's not the case. And that will be proved out by, I think, the dashboard that's going to be posted starting tomorrow. But Dr. Lockard, you also said, you feel pretty comfortable about what we're doing in our schools, right? Like we're taking all the right precautions, right? We're masking up. Everybody's following the masking rules. We're washing hands. We're using lots of hand sanitizer. We're social distancing. The protocol is being followed much better in the schools than out in the community at large, and that might be why we're seeing the dynamics that we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I visited our schools in the hybrid model. Several of them obviously have been a part of all the planning that's happened. I'm never going to say to you that someone hasn't encroached 6 feet on someone at some point. We certainly know that's going to happen. I'm never going to say to you that somebody's mask has slid off their face or they've had to have reminders to put it on. But by and large, all the mitigation strategies that we know they're important, social distancing, mask wearing, washing hands, we are doing that to the greatest extent possible in our schools. I give our teachers and our students and their families and our administrators tons of credit for just constantly reminding, constantly sort of rehearsing those mitigation protocols.
And Dr. Lockhart, if I could chime in, I agree with you 100% because I think, I don't remember what the total number of positive cases we've had that have been in your buildings, but I know it's more than, I know there's more than a handful. I know it's more than 10. I mean, that's going to go on your dashboard tomorrow. I don't remember what that number is offhand, but to only have one documented transmission, because we are putting these people in quarantine, and our contact tracers are calling them on a regular basis to make sure that they're not becoming symptomatic or that they would get tested. So while you know, I know there's statistics out there that say there are a lot of cases that go undetected. I think with the way that we're putting folks in quarantine that are related to these school system cases, we would almost certainly know about anybody that would become positive while they're in quarantine. But that's, you know, and I do think that's a lot for what we're doing. But I will say, you know, as much as I want to say we're doing the right things in the schools that we have open right now, I also know that with as many cases that we have spreading in the community, this is just not a time to be opening additional things because it is not going to be manageable. And I understand the timing of this is absolutely horrible, but I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, we're going off the charts for what the state's recommendations are, and there's nothing that's going to stop it in the next couple of days because the averages are just going up because of the numbers that we've had over the weekend and yesterday and today, and I don't see that changing. I will tell you our testing site's been at capacity on the last 3 days that we've run it. We're looking at increasing capacity there so we can potentially test more people. So that's just an indicator that more people are not feeling well and coming to get tested. And the number of folks that are actually testing positive there are testing at a much higher percentage than what we were seeing traditionally as we've been running that testing site.
Mr. Singer, being a high school teacher, I'm very concerned also with overdoses and suicide. Where are we in the last 30 days in the county?
I didn't bring that specific data with me tonight,
just
but
a ballpark. I am very concerned about that.
we really haven't. We had a point back in September when we saw a high rate of overdoses in the county, and things have kind of leveled off. We haven't had any spikes because we normally send out an overdose alert when we have high numbers of overdoses during a period of time. We haven't had to do that in the last couple months. September was bad, but again, the opioid overdoses and whatnot that we're seeing are generally not high school related, and the suicide numbers were. I had shared those at one point in time because Commissioner Boucher had asked me to share them with the commissioners. We're actually down this year, and I think that's largely because we've had a very active support group for prevention type of things that we've gotten involved over the last couple of years. We had very high rates back about 2 years ago, and last year and this year the numbers have been down, and I have to attribute that to a lot of work that is being done by our staff and staff in the community with support groups and prevention type things that are going on.
Well, do you also feel that things are not reported as often now because of Narcan's availability to like families or over the counter?
You know, it's difficult to say. We do document any refusals of transport and that type of thing with EMS. I know people have talked about that. We don't have any quantifiable data that would say that we're underreporting at this point in time, but I mean, it's certainly a theory, and people have looked at it and have not been able to document that that's the case. But I'm not going to say that somebody's not going to be able to come out with a study that would show that that does have an impact.
Thank you.
Mrs. Herbert, the other piece you mentioned regarding suicides, and I think about mental health, obviously.
I do.
I've heard from folks throughout this time that we've been either out of school or in hybrid, or high schoolers particularly. That's a concern of mine. And I know
Too,
that
that's why I brought this
I
up.
know that school is a stabilizing factor for many of our students. I will say, and we can get into this later, we do still provide supports. We do still connect people with all sorts of community collaborations that we have to support mental health. But I also totally recognize that that's very different from being in school every day and
It
being
is.
able to access a counselor or access a trusted adult or access the services that we provide that some students may not otherwise seek out on their own, or perhaps their parents can't or don't seek out for whatever reason that might be. And so, you know, I've wrestled this entire time with thinking about student needs, not just obviously the academic ones, which we've been totally focused on, but also student mental health needs, and how can we best support students when they're not with us, not just academically, but their mental health. And like I said, I know I've got some staff that have, you know, a lot of good information, and we've tried through our school counselors and schools to push that information out as well. But then we weigh these metrics that Mr. Singer is showing to us with what we know are some of the pressing needs, and it makes it very difficult.
Yeah, I know, because we've all received emails that, you know, my child needs to get back into school, and then we have terrible numbers, and that's why. But I know the mental health because of me teaching in the high schools for all those years, and there is a definite need to be attentive to that.
And I think that's why I was asking if we can get those 2 days, if we can get tomorrow and Friday in, get Monday and Tuesday, get those 2 groups of high schoolers in, because maybe just that simple 2 days of connection just might be some type of peace of mind. It might be some type of, okay, I've got what I needed that couple of days. Just one kid, that couple of days just might be making a huge amount of difference. And if we gotta pull the plug, then at that point, fine. But to me, I mean, we did this to our high schools last month, and we all saw the emails we got from our high schoolers, and we heard from their parents. I can tell you right now, if we have to pull the plug tonight, that's horrible. I think we're gonna start seeing kids drop out. We're gonna start seeing even more kids being pulled from our system. And we're going to even start seeing more kids fail and just give up.
Right, and we had every intention of starting tomorrow with our high schools, and even early last week we communicated that I know collectively are feeling that we're not in control of obviously of the community numbers that Mr. Singer is presenting here, and that puts us at a really difficult spot. The timing is terrible. It's the last thing, you know, you want to have happen. I'd be curious to hear from.
If I could just interject here one more time, and that is, I mentioned before, I've gotten a lot of pressure from both sides on this, and I've tried to look at what makes the most sense. And I've really, any time that I could say that the mission of the schools needs to be considered over and above what's happening with some of these numbers, I've tried to support you all on that. I just think we're at a point right now where there's not any metric you can look at that says this is a good time for us to do something more than what we're already doing. And I guess that's what I really struggle with is when we're spiking off the charts, there's just no way that I can see that it makes any sense and I certainly understand, and I feel for the position you guys are in, and the unhappiness that it's going to cause amongst certain groups of people about if you don't go back to school tomorrow. But I just don't think there's any scientific way to support what you're wanting to do.
Devanchi, what are you hearing?
So, mental health is, of course, the biggest thing that's afflicting high schoolers right now. I've seen, heard, and talked with so many high schoolers, and they're all just not doing well with that right now in this environment. There's increased levels of anxiety overall, and last month, they were very excited. They were looking forward to that date. And then when that was moved forward, they were very disappointed. And now with us wanting to change it the day before, I think that's an immense disservice to the students, because that's so many hopes that just go plummeting down. But there's also the metrics and again, the safety of the students. That's the biggest priority. But there's some way that we can balance the two. Mr. Singer, would you be comfortable with a partial high school reopening with only 1 or 2 grades going in tomorrow, or is that not something viable either?
I'm sorry. I guess there's not really a model out there that would show anything with these rates of transmission that anybody would recommend. I mean, I'm not suggesting that we stop what we're doing necessarily with the middle and elementary school students. Although, you know, if you look at the metrics, it would say that we really should be considering potentially not having that going on. And I can't see any way to advise you that we should be bringing people back into the high schools in person. And the one thing that I did mention was that we had 23 cases, I think, last, and they're on slides that are further up. 23 pediatric cases last week under the age of 18, and 75% of those were high school students. So we're not seeing as many cases in the elementary and the middle school and the preschool ages. And again, this week, I think we're up in the 30s for cases and people that are under the age of 18. So it's not that that younger people aren't getting it, but I will say that there are studies out there that actually talk about there being a lot less risk in the elementary and middle school, which doesn't nearly concern me as much as there is the adolescents. Once they seem to reach high school age, seem to spread this disease around just as much as adults do. So, and I think some of it also has to do with the behaviors and whatnot. But so, I mean, I understand the difficult situation you all are in, but there's no way that I could advise you that this is a good idea.
And Devantia, I appreciate the outside the box thinking. I mean, you're making the same statements that I'm thinking, right? Like last month, it was because of staffing situations, we were not able to open the high schools. It wasn't because of number of cases, it was staffing concerns, but it was very short notice. It was, 5 days, and that threw the community into a tizzy and the high school students. To say, and because this has been such a significant spike in such a short period of time, I don't think any of us were expecting to be in this situation tonight. In fact, I know I got an email from my daughter's high school as late as 3 p.m. this afternoon saying, hey, here's what's going on tomorrow, right? When we open up hybrid. So to pull the plug tonight,
I don't think we can.
for tomorrow morning, I don't see how we do that without devastating the high school students, and not even that we'd be able to get communication to people in time. Absolutely. Like unless everybody is tuned into this board meeting, I'm not sure that we would even be able to get the notifications out in time to talk to people. So
I'm going to be honest, Donna, right now, I'm not worried about the COVID numbers for our teenagers. I'm worried about our suicide and attempted suicide rates that could potentially happen this weekend with our teenagers. Because we have gotten so many emails from parents about how depressed and their anxiety levels. That's what I'm worried about at this point.
And I'd like to have open communications with the commissioners about how do we work together to try to manage this down as a county, because I do struggle with the fact that the transmission hasn't really been in the schools. So to look at the schools as the first and only thing that we're talking about, making the restrictions tougher, I struggle with that, right? So, and from the community perspective, right, we're getting lots of emails from the community as well saying open the high schools, but at the same time, we have to message to that community, if you want the schools open, you have to do the right thing, right? So we have these parties and social gatherings that are happening in the community and saying your actions, your adult actions, are impacting the kids. Right, so we need to say to the community, do the right things, right? That's the only way we're going to get the high schoolers in.
Why are they talking about this?
Well, I'll jump in. I don't think somebody might need to mute their microphone. to that, Mr. Singer, you indicated we're at 4.5% positivity today and 14.8.
Superintendent, we're going to be over 15 tomorrow. There's no question about it.
So,
And that puts us off of any of the charts that the state put out.
well, right, that's what I'm saying. I mean, we looked at the COVID-19 guidance for Maryland schools. We're going to be off the charts in new case rate above 5% and cases greater than 15 per 100,000, which there's not a category for opening or having students in school at that point on that recommended chart from the state, MSDE and the governor, MDH.
And I'm not saying, and I will tell you, I think we're going to probably exceed 5% positivity this weekend. I can't say that for sure, but I can tell you for sure, because I know how many cases we had today. We just haven't calculated it yet, that we're over 15 cases per 100,000 tomorrow.
And again, I do think, we had said earlier that, again, we would make decisions based on the metrics. We went to this guidance for Maryland schools metrics. And again, we said we would use October 19th as our new baseline. And it looks like that October 19th, it was what, the 5.5? And again, like you're saying, we're really getting off the chart. So again, I mean, if we're letting the metrics guide us, again, it looks like we're just in dire straits here, and it looks like we have to really come up with another model of providing for our students. And again, I mean, the high school situation, I mean, as we're saying, the timing of everything has just been awful. It was awful the last time, and now here we are this time looking at these metrics, and it looks like, again, we've got another tough decision to make. We've got to, and again, Dr. Lockhart, I'm sure that you and I guess student services, I'm sure you're going to continue to do what we're doing and hopefully more as far as the mental needs of our students. But again, this is a pandemic, and we're going to have to say that we're looking at the metrics and using them to help guide our decisions.
And I think,
if I could, I don't think it's a coincidence that we opened a school several weeks ago and these numbers are spiking. I know what the contact tracing is not showing that to schools, but I don't believe in coincidences. I think one is somewhat related to the other. I do. I know that the younger kids are mostly asymptomatic, therefore they're not going to be tested, and that's not going to happen. But it doesn't mean that they're not passing it around and taking it home.
Well, Commissioner Frazier, I'm sorry, but I don't think our elementary school kids are the ones at stables, at the bars, or doing mass gatherings that adults are doing. I'm sorry. Our kids are elementary age. They're not 45 to 65, and they're not the ones that are causing the mass increase of cases. I'm sorry. I mean, you can't blame the schools being open for this. The commissioners need to.
We said we would look at the metrics and follow what the metrics said, and actually, they've gone up.
actually, that's not what we said.
I'm not blaming the schools. I know there's a lot of protocols in effect in the school, and I know they're trying to mitigate as much as possible. But if you said you're going to look at the metrics, and when the metrics went to a certain rate, you can make some decisions. The metrics are above what you said they were going to be. I think it's time to make some decisions. And if you're not going to make them now, then at most, wait one more week and look, and then make decisions. Because if they're still heading in the same direction that Mr. Singer believes they're going to be heading, some decisions have to be made.
Is the county commissioners, why haven't the county commissioners looked at the matrix too and taken a couple of steps back in the stages, or started implementing some type of minimization of what is at the bars, the numbers, or the restaurants? Why didn't the commissioners do that before the governor did, if they saw the numbers as well?
Well, I will say, I just want to chime in here a little bit and say that we have had support of the liquor board and the county in trying to enforce the restrictions that are in place, because most of the businesses have been very good about complying. We've had a few businesses that have not been as good, and we've really done the best we can to make sure that we're enforcing what the requirements are at those facilities. I think, you know, the largest spikes we're seeing though are these family gatherings, and I guess I know that I don't want to stop the discussion that's going on, but is it okay if I finish up these slides, because I have some thoughts towards the end that I think kind of fit in with what you guys were talking about, and as to what we need to be thinking about as a community.
Go ahead, Ed.
Go ahead with the next slide, please. These next few aren't real key to what I want to talk about. This is just showing the trend, and obviously we know where that's going. Next slide. And this is the deaths. Next slide. The hospitalizations. Next slide. This is, I think this slide's important because, you know, you're talking about the ages. We've got the less than 18 that red bar is higher than it's ever been right now. And the orange bar next to it, the 18 to 29, is also pretty decently high. Obviously, it's not higher than what it has been, but the under 18 has been huge this past week, and again this week we're seeing that continue. Next slide. And it's just another graphic depiction of that same thing. You can see that that red line has picked up higher than it's ever been. Next slide. These are the things that we really need to need to have people in the community thinking about when we're talking about wanting to keep schools open or to reopen the high schools and that type of thing. And I'm not saying that people aren't doing this. The part where we talk about parents sending their kids to school, and that is making sure that they're screening, keeping their children home if they're sick, send their children to school with the face mask, sanitizer, and other supplies, and make sure their children are following the guidelines, and re-emphasize that with them. And this last one is, I think, the most key piece to this, and that is, we as families, if we want our schools to be open, we need to reduce the higher risk behaviors outside of school to reduce the chance of spreading COVID-19. Because if we've got large numbers of cases in our pediatric ages, we're going to be stuck in this same situation until these numbers start coming down. So I can't emphasize it enough that we've got a civic responsibility to try to do the right things. And if you're in a place and it doesn't feel right, that there are too many people around or something like that, it's time to leave. And that's just, that's the way that's the kind of habits that we need to get into as adults, and make sure that we're doing what we can to limit the spread. Things to keep in mind is the more people you interact with, the longer you interact with those people, the closer you are with people. And if you're not wearing masks, it's going to cause, these are the things that cause the disease to potentially spread more. So with the community case rates being higher, and they certainly are right now, we've got to do everything we can to minimize these risks. And I know we're all very social people, and it's difficult, but any type of interaction with large number of people just increases that chance for transmission, especially when you're inside, and especially when you're in close contact. And the last slide's just next slide, just a graphic to remind people: wear your face covering in public, continue to practice social distancing, wash your hands, frequently wipe down high-touch surfaces, plan to do outdoor activities rather than indoor, and avoid large gatherings. And it's the same thing we've been telling people since March, but I think, the governor referred to it as COVID fatigue, and many people have COVID fatigue. But if we don't follow the rules and do the right things, our cases aren't going to come down, and we're going to be stuck having these difficult situations about whether it's safe to reopen schools or not. And with the metrics we have right now, we're not in a good spot. So you can go ahead and end the slideshow on that end, and we can get back into whatever discussion you all want to have before I hop off.
Right, and Ed, I appreciate those comments, especially the ones about the parties and the social gatherings being truly the driver or the root cause of these. Because, you showed the number of new cases under age 18, and it's my understanding that the half of those are due to one party of high schoolers. So it's and those are ones
this week's numbers. Those are in next week's numbers.
and the high schoolers are not in the schools, right? So it furthers the discussion of these are not being driven by transmission in the schools. I mean, I think you said on Saturday. I just want to make sure that we're not, the community isn't latching onto conjecture and false assumptions, right? Like, it's not being driven by transmission in the schools, right? That doesn't mean that, but it impacts our ability to open the schools and keep the schools open, of course. But I just want to make sure that we make it loud and clear that this isn't from school transmission, the vast majority of this. So
we're going to share whatever data we have, and the data right now does not support that there's active transmission happening in your school. So but that doesn't also, I want to make it clear, that doesn't mean that it's safe for us to reopen additional things at this point in time because of where our numbers are. And so, I mean, it's, while we're realizing that we're doing a good job with doing what we're supposed to be doing in the schools, we're at a really bad point from a metric standpoint.
And I tried to talk twice, but didn't get to. A couple things. One, yes, we said we'd follow the metrics and we discussed things. But what was said in the minutes on August 26th, if you guys decide to reopen, regardless of what the numbers do, that you stay open unless the number of kids you got in isolation and quarantine makes the operation of the school impractical. That hasn't happened.
Well, and Mr. Kyler, I haven't suggested that you close the elementary schools and the middle schools.
Yeah, no, I understand. I agree, and I know you haven't. But I feel a little bit like Mrs. Savigny's been saying, and if we're going to follow the science, we're either going to follow it. We aren't going to pick and choose which science is good and which science is coincidence. We're going to follow the science. And I feel strongly that the kids are safer when they're going to school than when they're not. We looked at your next to the last slide, and when they're going to school, they take their temperature, they monitor things, they wear a mask. When they're out running around, they don't. I think we're doing a disservice to the kids not to let them start high school tomorrow like we promised. And the one thing I keep comparing it to that everybody seems to hate, across the line in York County, they opened up before Labor Day. They've had one case from within the school. All the rest came from the community. Like 3 middle school cheerleaders went to a party and got it and brought it to school, but nobody else got it. They've gone from hybrid to full open. Elementary, middle is fully open. High school is fully open, but only 4 days a week. They're doing virtual on Wednesday for the high schools, which was a compromise, which I don't know if we're going to talk about tonight or not, for planning time and stuff for a break for the kids. And their community numbers stay very similar to ours. And the schools haven't had problems beyond what they could control. And as they used to say, the proof's in the pudding. And I think our science supports that the schools aren't generating cases. We're a big part of the community, so we're seeing it. But, I mean, that's my feeling is, yes, we said when the metrics went up, we'd evaluate it. And yes, if there weren't staff issues beyond our control and the staff's control, the high schools would have been open for almost a month by now. And I wish they had been, but that's hindsight. We're where we're at. But that's my personal opinion. And Mr. Singer, I understand what you're saying. And then I have a technical question for you. At 3:43, I got a call from the Maryland COVID line. I didn't answer it quickly enough. I called back and they said, we didn't want anybody from this number to call back. Then they transferred me to a county number where I got a tape recording and left a message. Is that typical? I mean, I saw Maryland COVID on here and I thought, man, I better talk to them. Is that typical?
Well, and there may be some glitches in the system today, because today's the first day that we've had to refer anything out to the call center, because we've generally been handling all the calls locally.
Okay.
And one of my, well, so typically you're going to get a call from somebody and you're going to call that person back because they're a local health department
Yes.
staff member who's staffing our contact tracing. We've had so many cases in the last 2 days that we can't keep up with all those cases.
Okay.
And that's part of the reason I'm really concerned about the potential for reopening high schools is because there's just not any more that we can do with the number of cases we've got in the community right now. And you guys are kind of going to be on your own because, we can't refer these out to NORC like we're doing with the community cases. We're going to have to figure it out. And I just don't know we have the resources to deal with that. But that's anyway. I mean, we could certainly talk offline if there was an issue that you had and we need to resolve it. But we started referring calls out to the call center today because we could not keep pace with. We're going to hire more people locally, but right now we for temporary we had to refer out to the state contracted call center, which may have caused some glitches today.
So would they tip, and this is for other people, not just, I'm one of the dumber ones, so if you answer my question, you'll get the rest. I get a call like this and there's no voicemail, just ignore it?
Well, no, I wouldn't want people ignoring it.
Okay.
They should be getting a message if they're getting a call from that COVID number.
Okay. I didn't get a voicemail, but I did try to call it back and I left a message. So I've done what I need to do.
So if somebody gets a call from the COVID number and they're not sure what to do or they have any problems, they should call the health department's hotline number for COVID. And I've got
Okay.
I should have this memorized by now. Let me just take a quick look so that I can. If we're going to mention this, I certainly want to take the opportunity to tell them to call us if they're having having an issue.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah.
410-876-4848. And the other thing that might complicate this a little bit today is our office is not open for normal office hours because it is Veterans Day. But if anybody's got any questions or any concerns, if they call that number, we'll make sure that they get to talk to the appropriate people. That's 410-876-4848 for any issues with COVID.
Thanks. And my last thing on what we're doing, I've gotten a number of emails, and I almost feel like I need to say, based on some of the comments this evening, I don't know that we sit in here and bash teachers, and I try very hard not to bash teachers. I've gotten a number of emails from teachers with reasons not to open, and again, they've told me my math's wrong and several other things, which is fine, and I'm not bashing them, I'm just stating the facts. But since the weekend, I have gotten more emails, a handwritten letter, and text, and phone calls, please open the schools. And those people knew the numbers, and that's why they were afraid. And I'm getting at least 2 to 1 of please open the schools. And again, our emails, and again, I'm not bashing anybody's statement of facts. We get multiple emails from the same person. We get multiple emails with the same talking points. And even counting those, I'm getting 2 to 1 of please get us back in school. I talked to a few administrators in the last 2 or 3 days and specifically had questions, and no one of them said don't open. I've talked to several teachers, and again, 2 to 1 probably was please open. Now that doesn't make it scientific and that doesn't make it right, but when I'm constantly told I don't listen to people, I'm sorry, but just like the recent election, if whether or not you voted for these 2 people, they got the majority vote, they're here. And when I hear from the majority of administrators, staff, and families in Carroll County, I've at least got to listen to it, and it's got to be a factor in my decision.
Devanshi, let me ask you something as a high schooler. Would 2 days mean the world to you versus staying virtual? Would just 2 days give you just that little tiny sense of, okay, I got a little break?
I mean, I definitely think that some time in hybrid is better than no time to get that one-on-one interaction. And another reason is that it is extremely short notice, as we've said before, to tell high schoolers that they're not going to go back tomorrow morning at 6:40 p.m. right now. So I think I support having it until Wednesday and setting that limit and then coming back to reevaluate it. I don't think we can say right now that we're fully going into hybrid for the entire time period because the case numbers are extremely worrying. But again, I think it would be a great disservice to the high schoolers to say today that you can't go back tomorrow morning.
And I appreciate your honesty, and I'm very thankful for that, because that exactly what you said is what I've heard from a lot of high schoolers. Just give me a day or two. Give me a moment. And we've promised you guys that, and we need to somehow figure that out, and even if it's the smallest matter possible. And I appreciate your honesty. Thank you.
I think we'd be willing as a board, I mean, does it make sense to, we can regroup early next week, right? Like if we said, okay, we're going to have if we had the B cohort go in Thursday and Friday and the A cohort go in Monday and Tuesday, and if we could, and I don't know, Commissioner Frazier, if you think that, are the commissioners willing to talk with us to try to make a plan moving forward to see, how do we reduce the community spread? Because Mr. Singer has said the transmission isn't really coming in from the schools, it's coming in from the community. So is there a way that we can work together to develop an action plan to bring those numbers back down and not penalize the high schoolers or any of the kids? And we can reevaluate early next week. Even if we did, and these are all ifs, right? They're all what ifs. If we did send the kids for the high schoolers on Thursday, Friday, and Monday, Tuesday, it would have to be with the message that, look, understand, we might turn around and have to pull the plug next week, given the numbers and the situation. But I just don't see logistically how we can pull the plug for tomorrow morning.
I think it's a good idea for the commissioners and the Board of Ed to get together and try to work things out. I think it's a fantastic idea. I think we should absolutely do that. I know tomorrow we're going to be talking about the exact same things we're talking about here tonight in our meeting, because we're going to have the update from Ed and everything else. So I know that will come about. And I think possibly after the meeting or something, the boards could get together somehow and talk this out. I don't want to be misrepresented here and saying I want to shut down the schools. I just want to take the science into account in making decisions. That's all I want. As long as we're doing what we said we were going to do, discussing the metrics when they come up, and if they go up a certain amount, we're going to look and possibly reevaluate. That's what the board said they were going to do. That's all I'm asking for. I'm not asking to make the decision, or I don't think we can do that right now. But like I said earlier, next week, next Wednesday or whatever, would be a great time to look at this again, especially if the numbers are spiking again. And, like I said, we'll talk about this tomorrow in session, and I'm sure we will. But you also have to remember that the governor's step backs, I would call them, just went into effect. So I think we have to give that a day or two or maybe longer to see how that works before we come in and cut it back more. But I'm not saying what won't happen tomorrow in our meeting. I just have to say, the governor's step backs just started. So it's going to take a while to see how that affects everything. There's always a lag.
Right. Okay, Commissioner Frazier, thank you. I appreciate that.
I think that would be a helpful conversation to have, Commissioner Frazier. Thank you. I also understand, the expectations, Devanshi, I appreciate your candor. The expectations of our students, it breaks all of our hearts that we're even having these conversations and where we are at this point. I come back to something Mr. Singer said in addition to the metrics. Well, there's two things that keep standing out in my mind. One is, if we're at a place where we don't exist on these charts anymore, I implore us to follow the guidance. Okay? And then the second is, every day I have a team of people, all they do is work with the health department and our health rooms and our schools in trying to, it's not the number of actual cases, okay? It's all of the contact tracing, the close contacts, the persons under investigation who might have some sort of COVID-like symptom. We're doing that because that's what we're required to do. That is impactful. You heard me talk about the number of staff that impacts. And I've talked to a lot of parents, and I know Mr. Streaker and probably Mr. Singer's folks too. I've talked to a lot of parents who have had to have their kids quarantined because they were a close contact of somebody who has COVID-like symptoms, but not COVID. And so that is, and so when you say, Mr. Singer, that, you know, this throws you over the top in terms of not being able to support it, that's a big concern of mine, because I don't want to, it's our obligation to follow through if we have, you know, if we have situations or concerns of trying to track folks down and get in contact with folks.
Yeah, and I can't, you know, I can't tell you what decision to make, but I can tell you that we've already exceeded our capacity to be able to keep up with the contact tracing, and that's why we actually wound up referring cases off to the state call center today. So, I mean, if we wind up with, you know, 20 or 30 more type of tracing activities we've got to do because we've reopened high schools, we're not going to be able to support that. You guys are probably going to have to figure that out pretty much on your own.
The what's supposedly at the governor's office for all the contact tracing and the stuff for symptoms only. What percentage of the contact tracing is that? Would that be a factor that really helps the logistics of this if that gets approved? Is that a big deal or a little deal?
Well, yes, it's a big deal. The close contacts to either a person with COVID-like, well, let's just stay with that, right? A person with COVID-like symptoms, the close contact tracing is hugely time-consuming, and it is putting a lot of students and staff out of our schools. And I think Mr. Singer would probably agree that is...
I agree with you 100%. And Dr. Lockhart knows I actually wrote to the state asking them to do something about this. I'm not sure. So the state actually rewrote some guidance and they gave it to the governor's office. And I would guess because the cases are spiking right now and most of the school systems have decided that they're scaling back on what they're doing, that the governor's office probably doesn't have an appetite to loosen up the restrictions at this point in time. I can't say that for sure. I mean, it's only my supposition, but I do know that this has been discussed and that the superintendent of schools for the state, that Dr. Lockhart had reached out to her and had reached out to the deputy secretary at MDH, and I think they were all on board with this. But at the state level, ultimately, the governor's office is the one that has the ultimate say on these kind of things, and whatever recommendations his staff make and the staff at the Department of Health and the Department of Education make are recommendations, and ultimately the final say is going to be with the governor's office. So I can't say whether we're ever going to see that change in the near future or not.
Okay, I'm just feeling like Dr. Lockhart, our numbers are off the charts. The cases are spiking. We're exceeding the capacity of Mr. Singer's staff. Our staff, really, our staff capacity has been overextended as well. Again, I don't think we have a choice as far as saying, okay, we're not going to look at the data and follow the data. I'm sorry, that's where I am with it right now. So I want school to return to normal. It's not going to be able to return to normal anytime soon. I think, again, we had done a great job with our virtual learning. And again, if we need to have all virtual learning again for a while until this pandemic either changes until the situation changes or until, there's more access to vaccinations or whatever. But again, I just don't think we have much of a choice to say that, we're not really going to acknowledge that the numbers are off the charts and the cases are spiking, and we just have to deal with what we can control at this point. So, again, I don't know whether you have a recommendation for us, or?
I needed to hear Mr. Singer and what his recommendations and thoughts were. We've said from the beginning, at some point, we may need to hit the pause button. And especially if we're not on a place that exists on the chart for recommended opening.
Right.
I think that's a time to consider hitting the pause button. When we started the year, we had said very clearly, we don't want to write off the whole semester. We want to try to get kids in school. We've done more than any system in Maryland in terms of bringing kids back into school. And I want to continue to make that a goal and continue to try to make that happen as safely as possible. But I have a hard time, as you illustrated, Dr. Dorsey, when we're getting to the place where we're not even on the chart that says you can be in limited or no in-person programs. I think Mr. Singer is predicting we're a day away from that. I get also, maybe we could see our high school students for a couple days. I hear you, Devanshi. I'm willing to entertain that, but at the same time, I also know we might have to then say, we got to hit the pause button here after a couple of days.
And that's what I'm wondering, can we?
Systemically, so we can see if the metrics come back down to where we're able to, on the charts that we're following, say, okay, we can re-enter here because now we're down below 15 per 100,000, or we're below 5%.
So I was gonna ask, let's send the B group on Thursday and Friday. We see if we can meet virtually Monday potentially, okay? See what happens over the weekend. Meanwhile, the A group goes Monday and Tuesday. If we find on Monday that it's still going up, then come Wednesday, we're virtual already on Wednesday, we pull the plug. All right, from this point on, we're gonna be virtual until after Thanksgiving. Then we make sure the numbers come down again. And then we can revisit it the beginning of December and see where we are. And I think, plus this also gives families a couple of days to plan. Because, we know what happened in March. That was different. That was everything shut down at that point. This, you still have families working now. Even though some of their businesses might have been cut back a little bit from the new governor's orders, families still need to make accommodations at this point. So that's what, I guess, do I make a recommendation for that?
One question, and I guess to Mr. Singer, are we better off to meet Wednesday than Monday to have the whole week's data?
I could certainly give you whatever we've got at any point in time to kind of tell you where things are trending. I told you tonight while the chart showed one thing, we're actually a much higher case per 100,000 today. I get data every day, so I can give you what the most current average is on any given day. So it doesn't matter whether it's a Wednesday or whatever.
Right. Again, I just want to reiterate, one of the big challenges is going to be the contact tracing. Without Mr. Singer's folks, between now and next week, that will be that's an extreme challenge for us every day. I don't want to get Mr. Streaker too stirred up here, but we rely on the health department to help us through this significantly. So I want to be mindful of that.
I think we also just remind our parents real quick, go through the checklist before you send your child on the bus tomorrow. If we do this, go through the checklist, check their temperature. Do they have a cough? Do they have a runny nose? And anything that potentially could seem COVID-like in a symptom, just go ahead and keep them home. And also, again, if the parent doesn't feel comfortable, do not send your child. Right. No one's making anyone send their child if we continue until next Wednesday.
Right, and I want to clarify something you said earlier. So if we're thinking, so I know some other counties recently did this. They said, because of our numbers, because of our case rates, the positivity was over 5, the cases per 100,000 was over the 15. They said starting, some of them said starting immediately, but some of them said, we'll go through this week, and then they're hitting the pause button. And so I'm hearing, is your recommendation, your suggestion that we hit the pause button for the system? I think it is because, again, if we're not on this chart, okay.
Mr. Lockhart, I have a question. You said it would be a challenge for the school system due to contact tracing without the help of the health department. Is that a challenge that they're up to? Is it something that can be done? Because it might have to be done. So if it's a challenge that we're up to, or the school system's up to, then that's great. If it's not, that's another thing that should be considered before you think about opening, the high schools up.
That's why I mentioned it, and I'll invoke Mr. Streeter. I will tell you, Commissioner Frazier, that this system has risen to the challenge over the last however many months, but in particular the last 3.5 weeks, to levels that I've never seen before in any of my experiences, to make what has been able to happen for kids in person happen. And it's taken everybody. Mr. Streeter, do you want to speak to the question that Commissioner Frazier raised?
Sure, and I just want to clarify with the concept of contact tracing, and I'm sure Ed would agree with this. I want to be clear that the nurses, first of all, I appreciate the shout out for the hard work our team is doing. We have a fantastic group that's supporting our students and our families as we learn about things with employees. It's a heavy lift, and our folks are doing an amazing job doing that in the schools. We're working right now, to be very honest. Emails come in this time of night as we deal with students and staff that come to our attention. So, but the one thing that's different, Commissioner Frazier, with the idea of contact tracing is an official function of the health department. It is not a function of the school system. The school system, when we learn of a student who is symptomatic, develops a list of students who is a close contact, and we share that information with the health department. So in essence, I don't want to confuse folks, that is somewhat contact tracing, but that's under the symptomatic students. So we identify any close contacts related to the school system. We share that with the health department, and then if one of those students is to become, we learn is positive, the health department takes over the contact tracing, which then goes beyond just the school system contacts. It also goes to community contacts. When we do contact tracing, which we officially don't do, we do close contact identification. We're talking about staff, students, people on the bus. That's our realm. And then, of course, we also have situations where we have students that have parents that are employees in the system, because that comes up as well as far as other folks. Mr. Singer, I hope I characterized that correctly. I know you and I speak frequently about this function, but
yeah, I think so. And I guess I just want to chime in again and say that it's not that the health department wouldn't want to support what needs to be done with these high schools reopening. What I'm telling you is we're already tapped out for resources. There's only so much I can do with the number of people that we have, and it does take some certain skill sets to do the work that we're asking people to do, and we're looking at trying to bring some more people on, but there's only so much I can ask the number of staff I have to do, and they're doing a great job, and we've wanted to keep this all here local so that we could make sure we had control over it and we knew what was going on, but it's gotten to the point where just because of the sheer number of cases that we have here, there's only so much we can manage. And when you're talking, 50 cases a day, if each of those people have an average of 5 contacts, you're talking 250 people in addition to the cases that we have to get in touch with. Plus, we're calling back on a regular basis all the people that are in quarantine to make sure that they're okay. Do they need resources? Do they need to be tested? So I think my contact tracing team is probably making in the neighborhood of a couple of thousand phone calls per day, and we're beyond our limit at this point, and that's just the way that it is. And it's not that I'm trying to be spiteful or anything of that nature. I'm telling you, I think it's a really bad idea to open up the high schools tomorrow. But ultimately, it's your decision. And I'm not trying to be threatening or spiteful or anything of that nature. It's just I can't do any more than what we're already doing.
So then, Ed, what you're saying is that why Mr. Streeter and his group will do the school-wide, I guess you call it, contact tracing, but the health department won't be able to take it beyond that. So
we'll send it. Some of this will get referred out to the call center, and it'll wind up being. I mean, I don't think we're going to exceed the state's contract with Newark that's out of Chicago. We've started referring some cases there today. It's just that we may not be personally handling it with somebody here locally. It may be somebody else out of another state that's going to be handling it.
Right, but it will be handled by somebody is my major concern. Someone will carry on that contract tracing.
We can't let it drop. And
Okay.
it may wind up, our goal is also we want to do it within 24 hours to make it effective. The other thing that's going to happen is some of these calls may wind up lagging because we can't get to them all within the time period that we normally expect to.
And I would say that timing is a significant challenge for with the school piece, because we're getting a lot of questions that come back as people hear, one person's contact trace and then they call back the school. So that timing will just exacerbate the duplication of efforts, as we're going through, and also making sure that people know. I think people's behavior, if everybody would do the right thing, President Savigny, you said that earlier, if people would just, follow the rules. We know Governor Hogan made a comment about the masks, which I won't quote.
I might.
Those pieces are very, very important, but the reality is people behave differently when they hear they're symptomatic versus when they hear they have COVID. So people's behavior changes. It's the reality of being infected with the disease impacts your behavior. I wish people would take that exact same stance when they were asymptomatic, as hopefully all of us are on the call this evening, that we would be proactive and to follow those metrics. But, people by nature have their own version of risk tolerance, and when the reality smacks them in the face, we all react differently. That's part of human nature.
So, and Dr. Dorsey,
Look, if there's anything pressing for me, I'm going to have to hop off in about a couple of minutes. So I try to accommodate you as best I can, but I've got other commitments I've got tonight. So I got about 5 minutes and then I got to go.
okay. Just a little bit more, Ed. So thanks for the heads up. Dr. Dorsey, you said about the charts. We've been saying all along that we're going to follow the state metrics, right? And at the moment, we're still on the chart. But as Mr. Singer was saying, we're projected to be off the charts soon. Is that in the effort to try to bring this around to a decision? We're really between a rock and a hard place at the moment. But is it possible that we could, and the problem with, just getting notice out to high schoolers for tomorrow and the devastation that might cause, is there a way that we could get behind opening up the high schools for the 2 days of this week for the B cohort, the 2 days of next week for the A cohort, and saying, okay, we're going to reassess as a group. We're going to give it until Tuesday, to get next week's numbers, see what happens, and we would make a call at Tuesday, but we can start messaging that to the community of everybody needs to be on point and aware that this is a decision that we're going to have to make next week, and that will give them the time to start thinking about daycare options, other things that may have to happen given the decision that we may be forced to make. But it at least gives the high schoolers a couple of days in, since we don't have the ability to give them the notice. And that Commissioner Frazier, you had offered up that you think the commissioners would be very willing to have a discussion with us of how do we better manage this overall situation, and if we could make that happen early next week.
I think that's a great idea. I think we should talk with each other and talk to the boards. I just still want to bring up one other point, because what you just made about notification. I would hate to have the notification be the reason something does or doesn't happen, because if there's a snow day or something like that, notification goes out and people know about it the next morning or that night. So while notification is important, and I realize what you're saying about giving them some lead time to get things done, and I understand all that, but I don't think notification should be the linchpin that either says, yes, we're going to do this, or we're not going to do this, because your school system has the ability to notify everyone within the system by tomorrow morning if they wanted to. So I just want to put that out there. Well, I'm not saying that as the reason to or not to do something, but that shouldn't be the reason not to do something.
No, and I appreciate that. And it's just as much the impact on the high schoolers, though, from basically saying, okay, tomorrow morning you're actually not going to get on the bus. It's, equal impact of those two things.
Ms. Vigny, if I might add too, I think in the communication, we need to signal to everybody. I don't want to play games with people here. We need to signal. There's a strong likelihood that unless our positivity rate comes back down below 5% and the cases per 100,000 come back down between 15%, we'll be shifting to the enhanced virtual temporarily. And I think we need to give a time frame, at least through Thanksgiving, and then reassess and see if those numbers can come back down again. Like I said, I don't want to just keep leading people along.
Yeah, we don't want to yo-yo.
Dr. Locker, would that be in the elementary school and middle school as well, or do you just talk about the high school in this instance?
Well, we said all schools, only because if you're not on this chart, it applies to all schools.
Okay, I just wanted to clear that up because I think there might have been some confusion.
Yeah. I clarified with Ms. Battaglia earlier.
Yeah, system-wide. And I think,
Okay.
because also thinking ahead of time, and I think I said this earlier, we have college kids that are coming home, and there has actually been press releases that college kids are coming home, and they are actually positive as well with COVID. So you have college kids that are traveling. So given the time frame, too, I think December 2nd, and again, I have to, of course, make the motion and everything on this, but I think December 2nd would be the best time to reevaluate, given also the time of sports potentially could be starting December 7th. And, we have everything else going on, of course, in December with Christmas. So it gives a little bit of time just to make sure that the numbers start coming down.
So what are you saying for December 2nd?
Okay, I'll just make a motion. How's that?
Right, and I'm not sure that we need to make that motion tonight. I think that that's the discussion that we would be having next week, right?
Okay.
But giving the community the understanding that this is something that's potentially going to happen, I think the decision that we need to make tonight is what we're willing to do for tomorrow or not, and then how quickly we're going to reassess next week and what exactly we're going to do to meet and reassess next week.
So I'm thinking,
does everyone agree with that?
I have a question. When we reassess next week, what are you saying?
So I was thinking at reassessing Monday, the 16th. That would give us the numbers for over the weekend. We would get the numbers from the weekend for this. So for November 16th and 17th, that would be the A days. If the numbers do not go down and they continue to go up like we were told Mr. Singer has said they're going to, come Wednesday the 18th, we need to pull the plug system-wide. Everyone goes virtual on the 18th. It's a virtual day anyway, but we would have to say, okay, on the 18th of November, if their numbers do not go down, we will stay virtual, and then we will really evaluate. I'm guessing December 2nd. And the only reason why I'm doing that is because that gives that Thanksgiving weekend, because holidays have had the uptick of numbers.
Okay, but again, if we're looking at the case rate or the positivity rate within a 2-week period, I don't know whether we can make a call on the 16th or the 18th. That wouldn't give us enough time to have the data.
Well, I think Mr. Singer gets the information, it ends on Sunday. the 15th. So the 16th, we would know if went off the chart. We would definitely know by the 16th if we are off the chart.
Is that correct, Mr. Singer? That you would have the numbers for the week if we were to regroup on Monday evening?
Is he still on here?
I think he's
gone.
Did he leave?
I
I think he said that he could do that, right?
I
He said
think
that
he
earlier.
could, but I think we said here, we know what the numbers are. You know, it's really, we technically don't need to make a decision about tomorrow. It's been made. But we need a decision about forewarning people and whatever. And I don't, and Dr. Dorsey, what you just said makes a little bit of sense.
Thank you.
If we, well, you'll be mad at me in a minute, but if we met the 25th and made the call, everybody's already off that Thursday, Friday. We're giving them a little bit more notice, and we'll have 2 weeks' worth of numbers to look at.
No, I'm saying we were going to meet next.
I know what
look at
you
next
said. I'm
Monday.
saying that's what she said.
Okay.
And it makes sense to me. If we're going to meet Monday, we might as well just call it tonight. I mean, we know what the number's going to be. I mean, we're not even giving it another couple days. And they're not going to have weekend numbers for us on Monday. We got to meet at the closest next Wednesday, and at the worst case, maybe Wednesday the 25th. And then at least at that point in time, we're giving the families Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday that they're already off notice, which softens that, I think.
But I think that was my fear, not fear. That was my concern, is that if we met on the 25th and said, okay, here's where our numbers are, we're getting better, we could look at opening December 2nd, and that's a hypothetical, okay? But then we look at the numbers, let's say on the 30th, well, there's been a huge increase because of Thanksgiving. So that's why when I was looking at the calendar and I was writing down, like thinking in my head, like, okay, how could we get the numbers down to if we had to close, how do we reopen? I definitely don't want to meet right before Thanksgiving, the day before, and make a decision on anything, because that whole weekend could change everything.
I think the way the numbers are going, just my opinion, should meet next Wednesday. The way the numbers are going, should meet next Wednesday, and then make a decision, because the numbers are heading up. If they're still heading up by next Wednesday, they're going to be off the charts. I think that is the latest you should make a decision because of the amount of community cases.
And I could live with Wednesday. I think Monday's too rushed. And Monday gives us no time to talk with you guys.
Right.
You know, I think, and I understand what you're saying, but if we give the notice now that we're meeting Wednesday to discuss this, and these are the possibilities, you know, who knows, maybe half the kids won't even show up tomorrow.
Right. I agree. I think we message the remainder of this week, there's a high likelihood we'll move back to all virtual starting next Wednesday. We will be meeting to look at our numbers. If we are falling above the 5% and the 15 per 100,000, that's what will happen.
Okay.
And I also agree with looking at that a little bit of time after Thanksgiving to give us time to reassess that.
Yeah.
To see.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think we can talk about the specifics next Wednesday, but whatever decision we make, maybe we're in a period of time that I don't care if we meet every Wednesday. You know, we need to keep looking at it and keep current with it and get the kids back in school as soon as it's safe to get the kids back in school.
And we owe that to everyone,
Agree.
to meet on Wednesdays until this is.
And I know whoever's listening, a lot of families are going to be upset with where we are, but I don't know that we can't control it, and we've got to follow. And the only thing that upsets me with the science is it doesn't appear the elementary schools and middle schools have been a negative for COVID.
Right.
But we can talk about that next Wednesday, you know, them versus the high school. But and it's tough. And our high school kids,
They're bored.
I apologize, and I've done that in emails. You know, I said I apologize. We let you down, and we did. They should have been there October 19th.
I agree. And We hear a lot
Or
from the
just
community.
respectfully interject and say, as your superintendent, I don't feel like we as a school system necessarily let them down.
Right. Yes.
Because we've been doing everything we can.
Yes.
I know what you were saying, Mr.
I
Fowler.
agree.
That's not
I
a joke.
agree.
The situation has let all of us down, and that's the hardest part, and because of the community cases and the data, but I'll stop there.
Oh, no, I agree. And again, central office, the teachers, all the staff, everybody's jumped through hoops. So, yeah, I don't apologize for the school system. I didn't mean it that way, but it's so heartbreaking.
Our biggest plea right now needs to be with the community to please wear their masks, to please do their social distancing. Please do not have large gatherings, because in essence, we end up punishing our children for the actions of adults, and it is not fair and that is not right.
Right, and Commissioner Frazier, if we could ask that the commissioners advocate for that at your meeting tomorrow, just a plea to the community. Please mask up, please social distance, please do the right thing. And I know that you guys have been doing that, but if we can reiterate the message.
Believe me, I'm pretty sure that will go out from almost every commissioner because of where we're headed right now. So you can bet that's going to happen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I just
Okay, so are we in agreement then that we're going to?
Well, let's state it specifically, what we
Right.
are agreeing on. So
We need a specific motion.
Okay. I make a motion, we continue with high school to open tomorrow, Friday, Monday, and Tuesday. On Wednesday, we will meet, we will reevaluate. If the numbers go off the charts, we do need to close system-wide. Next.
And that would be starting on Thursday of next week.
That's correct. That's what
Correct.
she said.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for the motion, yeah, we say we're meeting next Wednesday, and that decision that day could change things on Thursday.
If we are off the chart.
Well, I think that's what we
say
need to
that,
talk
but-
about.
Well,
Right. I think we need to look though. I'm sorry, but the chart, Let's be really clear here. The chart from the COVID-19 from the Maryland Department of Health. I'm over on if you were above 5% on that side. On the right side of the cases per 100,000, it's limited or no in-person programs. So if for some weird reason that we're at 6% positivity in Carroll County and at 11 students or 11 people per 100,000, I don't know if Ed Singer would say, or according to this chart, because it sort of falls in the limited to or no in-person programs. It might be a moot point. We might be above 5% and above 15. So I just wanted to, Ed's not here anymore. I'm not speaking for Ed, and I'm not trying to parse this chart out. I just know that there's probably some scenarios that get a little murky.
and what if we're just worse than we are according to this?
Yeah.
I mean, we could just
Yeah.
leave it at that. I mean,
So I will signal to
unfortunately-
the community in a communication that we decided that we're going to continue with our hybrid model, including high schools, Monday and Tuesday. However, it is likely that we will move to all virtual should our metrics continue to escalate beyond, the 5% positivity and the 15 per 100,000.
We should start messaging that, and the community should anticipate that that is a possible,
Possibility.
if not likely, outcome of our
Correct.
meeting next Wednesday.
And then on Wednesday, if it is above that, we can verify that, send a confirmation, and have some discussion then about that December 2nd or whatever the date
Yep.
was that you looked at. Okay.
Okay. To me, this is, it gives families that time, just in case. And it gives our high schoolers that we have promised those 2 days. Plus, it's the beginning of a semester. And I think our high schoolers kind of need that. It's a new class. They need to get that information. It's something else that they've continued in the semester. They need to get that information. So I think,
So really, we're saying to be prepared for all virtual classes on November 19th.
Possibility.
That's a
Pending-
possibility.
Yeah, possible.
Pending
Because I think,
metrics.
has anybody seconded?
Okay, so let me
Somebody has
reiterate
seconded,
the motion, okay? Let me try to encapsulate this, okay? So based on the recommendations of the health department and the fact that the rapid spread of COVID-19 through our community, we are recommending that we do continue with the hybrid model, including the high schools, through Tuesday of next week. We will meet again as a board on Wednesday to review the updated metrics for that week. The messaging that we will start to put into the community is that if those numbers do not improve as of our meeting next week, that we will be looking to move to all virtual starting on Thursday of next week.
Yeah,
and that is all programs.
well, I think you need to say it's a possibility that Thursday would be all virtual, because I feel like when we meet, what about small groups? What about, are there certain things we want to do? What about VOTEC? What about Gateway? Will there be exceptions? I don't think we want to make a motion that sounds like we're cutting
We're
everything
just
off.
shutting everything down.
I
Right,
think
so we would want to keep the
we will
small,
evaluate it,
Yes.
but families need to
Evaluate small groups?
understand it's
Okay.
very possible that it will be all virtual.
Right,
Limited
right,
or
and that-
no in person.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at, the limited or no in person. That's what I'm
Exactly.
saying, there's that caveat
that it would
there.
go back to the limited in-person version that we had prior to beginning the hybrid.
If
Limited
it's-
or no.
If it's still on this chart,
If it's, right,
Yeah.
if we're still on the chart, correct.
But I feel like that's what we're going to discuss Wednesday.
Yes.
We just need to
Correct.
say we're going to discuss it, and we're going to inform the families that that's a strong possibility.
Right. Inform the families that it is a strong possibility that that would be the action that would take place on Thursday so that people can plan for it.
Yeah, the communications.
Do I have a
so
second?
important.
Yeah.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All right. Now, Marcia, go ahead.
I just want to say it's so important to get this out to the community. And also, Dr. Lockhart, I would also like for you to put in there a statement about please follow washing hands, mask, and that at the very end. And I know it's repetitive, but we need to do that. We
Yes.
have to enforce that. Some people think they're invincible, and they're not. So we all aren't invincible. So we still need to, I think, just do a friendly reminder about the mask, the hands.
Yep, Ms. Caddis is already working on it, so we'll,
Thank you, Ms. Carey.
yep.
Follow the council recommendations. Follow whatever recommendations that are in place in the county.
But it's not
We need
fair. We have
follow
to
them.
be, we have to inform our community, our families, and our educators.
And I do want to reiterate that we would like to work with the commissioners, and I appreciate
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier's offer of support in that manner. I would like to make sure that those discussions happen, and by way, and we will be saying to the community, please, we as a Board of Ed are saying to the community, please do the right things. And the Board of Commissioners is likely going to be doing the same thing
Right.
come their meeting tomorrow.
Yeah,
so.
because one day I want to still wear my red lipstick, not wear masks. You got to
put it
add
on
a little
over top.
positive
A little
to
bit.
it. A little positive, because this has been so sad.
And I mean, it does frustrate me that, we have Raven Stadium open for a couple thousand, and we have the casinos open, and we have the racetracks, and we have things that are open for adult entertainment, but we're taking away from our kids, and I don't think that's right. And we need to, it needs to be emphasized that we should not be punishing our children because of the actions of some. And we've got to get this under control.
And I think countywide, we got to look hard at what the science is proving, and it's not the kids causing this. I don't think that means we don't start banging on, let's not take school and sports and everything away from the kids while I'm standing at a bar with a mixed drink.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. And I feel for those businesses, and I think Mr. Singer supported what you see nationally. It's the gatherings. And Governor Hogan said that big time yesterday. It's because somebody even asked him, does this apply to a church? And he said no. And I feel we have more rules. He said they have rules, they have regulations, their numbers aren't limited to 25. It's the parties, the gatherings where there's no rules. And again, that's why I still feel strongly, and I know I'm one individual, so individually, the kids, I think we've proved the kids are pretty safe in school. It's the community that's the problem, but I'm not sure how we fix that.
It's the outside gatherings. It's the bars. It's the tents. It's,
Yeah.
something else needs to be done. And it's not the kids. And I don't, like I said, I don't think it's right that we are punishing our children because of the actions of some. It's not right.
And before we leave this discussion, can we talk about when we do return to a hybrid model, about looking at that Wednesday as a way of trying to help our teachers who are...
When were we
How
gonna-
about, yes, I think that we should address
we need
that.
to do
Let's
that?
take a vote on the motion.
Oh,
I
I'm
think,
sorry, we
does
hadn't
anybody
voted.
have anything else to add before we vote on the motion? No, okay. Then I will call for the vote. All those in favor, can I get a verbal aye, please?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. And now, Dr. Dorsey,
Okay,
yes. I
and
think-
now, again, I would like for us to entertain some thoughts on how we can really help our teaching staff with Wednesdays when we are in the hybrid model. Because again, during those days, the teachers, during the hybrid model, we know the teachers are working with both the in-person students and the students who are attending virtually. And, there are challenges to that. There are challenges we hear over and over, the number of hours that they're putting in, trying to make their instructional program successful for them. So again, I would think if there's a way that we can give them some planning time on Wednesdays, which would also give the kids maybe some opportunity to get caught up on any assignments that they have, I think that would be helpful for both the teaching staff and the students.
I feel that's a win-win for everyone, and we need to proceed with that.
And Dr. Lockhart, I know that you and staff have been talking about those ideas. Did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Yes,
to?
I was going to ask Ms. McCabe just to jump in here. We have been looking at that. We worked with the state to make sure we'd still be in compliance with
Right.
the
Hours.
average number of synchronous time. But we've heard loud and clear, we know people are working incredibly hard. And I've heard from not just teachers, but also parents who are saying, hey, we need the time to be able to catch up here on certain days. So we can't be just completely, asynchronous on Wednesdays, but we have been working on ways in which we can make it a whole lot more flexible, more time for teachers, more time for students. So Ms. McCabe, did you want to jump in? She's been working with the directors who have been working with the principals on that piece.
Sure. So the guidance that we give in principals at this point is that Wednesdays can be more of a catch-up day and a time for teachers to work with individual students or small groups of students who might need review work or time, extra time with the teacher. So what we've suggested is instead of it being a completely asynchronous day, that teachers meet with all students at the beginning of the period, even if it's only for 10 minutes, to give students some direction for the day, even if the rest of the period is asynchronous, and then also have time to call students in for review work or review groups that might need to happen. So that has been communicated with principals at this point. Principals are beginning to communicate that with their teachers. It may take a little while to work all of the kinks out, all the bumps out of it, but that's the guidance that we've given so far, and we've received really positive feedback from it up until this point.
If I could weigh in on this, because again, I've gone to several schools again between the last meeting and this meeting and talked to a lot of teachers, administrators, and so forth. And what I'm hearing from everyone is that is there any way to leave Wednesday as a day where if students wanted to contact teachers, they could contact them, email, text, or whatever. And then if teachers needed to get back to students, they could get back to them. Because of what was already said here, students need to catch up, number one. And number two, teachers need the time to try to catch up with emails and grading and all that kind of stuff. But if you're requiring them to meet for the first 10 minutes of class, you're taking away from that time. If a student needs to contact a teacher, they have the email, they have the text, they could do it that way. If a teacher needs to, so just leave it as an open day. Believe me, there's a lot of work that's going to get done. But from what I've heard from the teachers, and I went to several schools again, they would like that option as opposed to being required to do 10 minutes or be required to have handouts or anything like that. It's just extra stuff on them. And I have to say this, as long as we're talking about this, what they're doing right now is not sustainable. I heard that from every single teacher that I went to. Not sustainable. And it's not the best for the students. This Wednesday being open to allow the students to contact teachers if they need to, and allow teachers to contact students that need to be contacted, I think would be the best method, but nothing required.
I've got to ask.
I don't know if that's possible, but that's what I heard.
Yeah, I've got to ask, which schools did you visit?
When I go to visit
can I
schools-
finish my sentence before you answer the question?
Go ahead.
I've talked to several schools, and one was totally the opposite. They didn't want more planning time on Wednesday, one entire school, and some were someplace in the middle. And right now, what I'm hearing, on Wednesdays, they would have 90 minutes, correct? And because they're not in school, they don't have the before and after school and some of those duties. And what I was told is, like I say, one school, I said, what if we doubled planning? And they were upset because they said, we need to be with our students. We don't want to give up that much time with our students. Now, others said, yeah, that would help. So I'm a little bit the other way. 10 minutes is pretty cursory. I think maybe it should be a period or something and the rest of the day for planning. I don't know what everybody else has heard, but about a week and a half ago, I put this out to several schools and just said, can you get me an answer on what you want with this? And none of them asked for the day off. And I'm not saying the day off, I'm saying a totally asynchronous day. None of them wanted that.
Well, again, when I go to schools, I tell the schools and the teachers, I'm not going to tell anyone what schools I've been to or teachers talk to me. That way, I think I get a much more honest opinion of what they actually want. I'm not going to talk about schools I went to. You can believe that I have gone to schools and I have talked to many teachers. So I'm not going to tell you what schools that I've gone to. I that would violate what I told the teachers when I went to talk.
Yeah, I respect that. And I wouldn't want to name the schools either, but I've got to think maybe we overlapped.
Devon.
So I think with the idea of the asynchronous day, I think it varies at the 3 different levels. For example, I've spoken to many high schoolers about this, and they mentioned that they're totally on board with this idea because high schoolers are sort of more independent and they have a bit more course load that they can, that they want to work through on their own time, with still that ability to have a teacher help. But then, of course, there's a middle school and elementary school where they may need some of that more structure or time with the teacher. So I don't think we can say standard that it's asynchronous for all 3 levels. I think there needs to be a strict distinction between the different levels of the schools.
Dr. Lockhart, what is the state requirement again for asynchronous days?
Right, so this is what we referenced. We were making sure we would still meet 3.5 hours of synchronous instruction average per day. Now, synchronous instruction has some definition to it. It doesn't mean that you have to be with every single student 3.5 hours a day. It's the opportunities provided. There's some nuances there, but that caused a lot of systems to have to, some still, if you remember, I think they gave them till the middle of the year to meet the mandate. We met it out of the gate. Cindy or Jason, in terms of this conversation, like I said, I don't want to throw us out of compliance, but I'm trying to be as flexible as I can. And a lot of times, as Devanshi said, it's up to the teacher or the class or the situation. I might only need a little bit of time with you Wednesday, but I might need more time because we got a lot of stuff to get through. But
I would like to say, from my experience, I have a third grader and I have a sixth grader. The sixth grader's doing great. Last week I found out that I was failing health with an 11%. And that we owed 22 assignments. Now, I'm on top of this, but as I look at it, those assignments keep going down to the bottom, down to the bottom, down to the bottom, and with a no due date, it kind of threw me off. So I think if you meet with those children, and then I can help my one granddaughter get caught up, and I just think that would be a great way to be positive on both ends, the teacher and the students. I think we need that. And I know I'm not the only grandmother or parent out there with difficulties on certain days. The other one, I don't even have to touch. She's got all her stuff done. And then when I'm failing health and 22 assignments behind, and I was a teacher, and I'm just like other people. I'm not used to all that computer, and it just keeps on going down. And also, I think everyone needs to know, as a parent or a grandparent or whoever the caretaker is, stay in contact with your teachers. That will really help also. So I thank you, Ms. McCabe, and your group. I'm sure you've talked and you've worked it out with all your directors and educators, and I thank you, because I think this will be a real positive thing for the county.
And again, I think what I've heard a number of you say is flexibility. I think as long as teachers have the flexibility to use that time, if they need to get caught up with students and the numerous assignments that need to be done, or, if they need to do some teaming or planning or phone calling or whatever, I mean, just...
Yeah, I'm a real person,
yeah,
and
let it be their professional judgment.
This is how it works now, so,
Right.
And we're all not perfect, and I think this will be so much better.
So I
And
think,
to
like,
your, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was gonna say, like, on Tuesdays, if the teacher already looks and sees that certain amount of students in a class need help, they can just kind of like, towards the end of virtual class or whatever, at that point say, okay, we're gonna schedule at such and such time tomorrow, come in and check with me. Our normal class would be, because they have virtual schedules. So whatever time on that virtual schedule on Wednesday, they would just have to go in and check in. And I think that helps. I think that gives that little bit of assistance, catch up, accountability. It just kind of helps out a little bit, and I'm fine with that.
I agree with you on that, like that with the accountability, at least at some point for the students to make sure that they check in.
Right.
How do we, hold them accountable for being present on that day, right?
And we need to take attendance.
Right.
Yes.
But two questions, and a comment first. Again, some kids don't have somebody at home helping them,
Absolutely.
and that worries me. But number one, is it worth it to look at this at different elementary, middle versus high school? I think your comment was well taken, that high school's different. I think if we do a totally asynchronous day on Wednesday, we're throwing away the K through 2 kids. But then secondly, I'm assuming this only applies if we're in hybrid. If we decide to go full virtual, then this won't be. This is only while we're in hybrid, correct?
Well, from when I talk to the teachers in the schools, that would be correct about it. This would only be if we're in hybrid. And I would also like to say, I heard the same thing about assignments not having a due date. Teachers, there's so many students out there that have assignments that are overdue because there's no due date on them. And what's going to happen is all those assignments are going to come in the last week before the end of the quarter or the last day, and the teacher is going to be bogged down with getting all these things graded and put it in the grade book and everything else. It's not the way to go. if you're going to hold students accountable, they should have a week or 2 weeks to get an assignment in. After that, it doesn't come in anymore. Teachers have to move forward as well. You can't go back 3 or 5, 6 weeks. Oh, this assignment was back there. Let me go back and find what that was. That's not working well right now. It's another change from what I heard that needs to be done with the hybrid. Assignments have to have a due date and maybe give them another week beyond that, and then that's it. Just like you would if school was going on. I mean, we're training kids not to do things now. That's not the way it should be done.
Which I will say right now, thank you to every single teacher. Today, I know, is the last day of the marking period, and I'm sure lots of kids are trying to play catch up. So every teacher, wherever camera's on, thank you, because I know you are inundated with missing assignments, and I deeply appreciate everything you're doing at this moment.
And it's tough in this environment, but I also hear from a lot of parents that have proof an assignment was turned in that wasn't counted and was told it was late. And I don't know if that's a glitch in the system or what's going on with that, but we actually put one family together with an AP at one of the elementary schools because they were just so frustrated. Since I've got a list, and he works, so he comes in the evening and he said, I've got a list of everything that was turned in, but they're telling me none of them were turned in.
We want to know about those and want to try to rectify
Oh, I
and
know.
work through that, yeah.
And they did. The school was very helpful with it, and I think it got straight, but that's not the only ones I've heard it from, because like Commissioner Frazier's saying, that this not a fixed due date and stuff being late that is or isn't, it's been a big deal, and on both ends. It's tough for the teachers, and it's tough for some of the kids.
I think for the first quarter, to me, this first quarter, it's okay to be a little flexible with it because this was all new. We came in with Google, we didn't really have as much in the spring. This is kind of, we're just getting our footing on everything. Definitely starting the second, quarter, it's going to have to be a little more strict on it. But we are still going to have to be a little flexible with those that, evening time versus those that can't get on during the day. And so we definitely need to make sure we keep those students mindful as well.
If I could bring something else up, if that's okay, because I have a few things from when I went around to the schools. Teachers are asking why record the sessions, and I'm going to tell you why. And I know you're recording sessions because if someone misses the session, then they can go back and watch it later. But once they start recording, students do not want to answer questions. They don't want to make comments because they don't want it recorded. They don't want other people hearing. They don't like that. If you want to try to get the students involved, I've heard this from a number of teachers, don't record the session. If students miss a class just like they would in regular school, teacher has notes and stuff like that, they can contact another friend that was there. The way it was done before should be the way it's done now. I think you'll get more cooperation out of the teachers out of the students that way. I've heard that from many, many teachers. Please, see if we can stop recording the sessions, because as soon as they record, number one, all the cameras are off. The only thing you see is letters or circles in them because no one's on camera anymore, and all the microphones are off. And that's another problem because then you don't even know the students are there. And at the end of the class, when you ask the students to log off, if they don't log off, they're not there. And the teacher then has to go manually log off those students. So, just a couple things that I've heard I want to throw out there why we're talking about the hybrid.
And we've been debating all night, it's a national trend that they record classes, and I think we need to learn how to do it. We need to learn how to do it right. And maybe we're not doing it right, but I know some very expensive private schools that if you're homesick, you sit there and watch the class. And we need to learn how, if there's an issue with how we're doing it, we need to learn, but not recording isn't an option.
Right.
Unless we're going to be the only county in the country that doesn't.
Right, that would
Yes.
pose, I appreciate the feedback,
yeah.
Commissioner, but that would pose some significant other unintended consequences for us. And I think Devanshi at the high school level would tell you that a lot of students, particularly some of the math courses, are going to go back and maybe watch again because they might have missed something live the first time, not even thinking about the students who maybe for whatever reason couldn't watch it live and need to see their teacher demonstrating or taking them through a problem
Process.
process or hearing the conversation. So your point is taken. We want to engage students, and we'll look at how we can best do that. But at this point in time, I can't. I'd be hard pressed to not continue being able to have that availed to our students.
Okay, I've just brought it up because it was mentioned to me numerous times. I don't know the best way to do it. Maybe a different way, like Mr. Kyler said, than what we're doing now. But but it has to be looked at. Is why I'm bringing it up.
So, Dr. Lockhart, I mean, I don't think that this is something that we need to take a vote on, right? But can you say again what the recommendation was 10 minutes at the beginning of, so again, this is during hybrid, right? Like if we end up going
Right.
back to all virtual, this concern goes away for that time period.
Right.
But when we are functioning in a hybrid model, in terms of the Wednesdays, are we going to, so we want to still be taking attendance for the students to make sure that they're checking in, that they are
Yes.
present. And what is the recommendation for what the teachers need to do on a Wednesday?
Ms. McCabe, can you lay it out again, please?
So on Wednesdays, teachers are supposed to be having all the students log in, and this is for each class. So each class, every student logs in for the first 10 minutes of class to do a quick review and get directions for what they're supposed to do during that class period. And then the teacher has the rest of that class period time to work with individuals or small groups, or if that's not necessary, call parents, do planning, and things like that.
So one question that I have is, will this asynchronous day be a catch-up day, or will it be something where they learn new instruction too?
So are you saying that, are you asking on Wednesdays, can they learn new instruction, or is it just a review day?
Yeah.
What the direction we've given is that it should be a review day. Now that's not to say that a teacher couldn't put new content up on the Google Classroom for certain students to work on or look through or preview. But the direction that we've given is that it should be a day for folks to catch up.
So as we move into the second quarter, I think like the two biggest things for students is mental health and instructional support. So I know many high schoolers after the first, they're very apathetic regarding school. So I think having a virtual day at fully virtual asynchronous day as a bit more flexible for high schoolers, less structured, as well as a day where they can go for instructional resources as well as mental health resources through different maybe clubs or something would be most beneficial to them at the high school level.
That's a great idea.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. I'm sorry. I've been trying to chime in and my phone isn't working, so I apologize, board members. I wanted to back up with what Ms. McCabe said. I spent the past couple weeks working with Dr. Williamson, the Assistant State Superintendent, in regards to providing her some insight on where CCPS is. All the concerns that are being shared right now are the same concerns that we're hearing across the state. I do want to say that as far as video recordings, CCPS was the first district to move forward with that, and we were the one school system that started doing that first, and we do have parameters built around that to make certain that all lessons can be recorded and can be archived, but they can only be archived for 7 days because then it becomes personally identifiable information. So I want to make that clear to everyone. The second thing I want to share is that we are an anomaly across the state right now. We are the one school system, if not one of few school systems now, that have moved to a hybrid model. That means that our synchronous hours are calculated differently now. For example, when a student comes on 2 days a week, that's a total of 12 hours. That's 6-hour days each day. Then there'll be 2 days that they'll be enhanced virtual. There's another 3.5 average that we've been expecting anyway in any enhanced virtual environment. you can see that we can quickly get to the average of 3.5 hours without any concern or any challenge, which is a good thing for us, which provides us, as Ms. McCabe said, it alleviates some of the restrictions and parameters that we can place on Wednesdays. What we do know is that we still need to meet with kids on Wednesday. It's not an asynchronous day. It's a day where we do have to, as Ms. Herbert said, we do need to make certain kids are attending. But it can be a quick 10-minute opportunity to connect with a teacher and determine who needs the extra help. I want to be very honest with the board. We have a large number of students that are not doing well academically. We know that. And that's why we're purposing federal funds to make sure that this grant money can be provided for students to have tutoring. And our teachers can also utilize that Wednesday to provide some intense types of intervention with these students. It looks very different elementary, middle, and high. But I want to go ahead and just share that not only as Ms. McCabe, I know that she's had these conversations with directors as well, is that the day doesn't have to look the same on Wednesday. That is, you can have a lot of your meetings for your classes in the morning and provide some autonomy and flexibility, as Mr. Kyler said, or Commissioner Frazier said, for kids to get work done independently. But then the afternoon might be also some time where, as Ms. Pataglia has voiced her concerns over the past couple of months, that this is an opportunity for kids to get some really intense attention, if you will, in small groups. That's what Wednesday is all about. It's not an asynchronous day, and it can't be an asynchronous day, quite honestly, but it can be a day with more flexibility and providing the autonomy to our teachers to make the best decisions for the kids in the room. And Ms. McCabe has communicated that to directors and principals to say, hey, listen, make Wednesday work for you and your staff and your kids and your community, because that's what's important. But I can tell you right now, we are one of the few school districts. We started off as one of the few school districts teaching 5 days a week, a normal schedule. And so we have no problem meeting the synchronous hours, if you will, but we want to continue to meet on Wednesday because we still have a significant contingent of students that are completely virtual every day of the week. They're not coming in on hybrid. So we need to make sure we maintain the integrity of instruction for those kids too. But I want to leave the board with the idea that, and knowing that there's a lot of kids that aren't meeting the levels that we would anticipate them meeting. And it is because it's different. And due dates and students getting work in, the reason why there's so much flexibility there is because of the level, the playing field is not level. There are students that have a lot of time. There are students that have a Miss Herbert that's a grandmother there that basically tell them you need to get it done. And there's a lot of kids that aren't. And we can't fail those kids. We have to teach the children, and we have to provide as many opportunities as we can to get the content across. And our high school teachers, God bless them, they are purveyors of content. This is their trade. This is their masters of this. And they want to cover the curriculum, and I get that. But it is very, very difficult to do it the way that we've always done it. So there's a lot of different variables in play right now that we're trying to figure out, as is everyone across the country.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson, and I really appreciate you bringing that up because I think the public also needs to understand is this isn't a day off. This isn't just a break day. This isn't, oh, I got all my work done, I'm going to watch TV day. This is you are still going to check in with your class. You are still going to be like, hey, what's going on? And the teacher's going to say, okay, so this is kind of like, this is the review day. All right, like if you want to go in and review for the quiz for tomorrow, here's the review sheet. Some students, I would like you to, and there could be like a little invite box. These students, I need you to stay on with me and we can go over. It's like a big flex day is how I like to look at it.
Mr. Kyler said it well. There's a lot of teachers that want more time with their kids. They're teaching bell to bell. And we said, listen, 50% synchronous, right? 3.5 hours on average a day. And our content people want to make sure the kids get the content with our AP, with any course. We want to prepare our kids to do well. And so that is in our minds of how to deliver our content and our instruction. And yes, Ms. Pataglia, you are right. There is going to be times where we schedule, I can tell you already with tutoring dollars, there are schools holding evening sessions, drop-in sessions, synchronous support sessions for kids to jump in with a teacher. It may not be their classroom teacher, but are giving them support. I just had an amazing conversation with Winters Mill High School in Westminster, trying to work together to have a night school to use their tutoring dollars, to have an opportunity for kids to be able to virtual or face-to-face jump in and get additional help a couple days a week. We have to think about education differently now. And yes, due dates are important. Yes, we want to keep to compliance. But the reality is we're trying to figure out new and different ways to get these kids to where they need to be.
And I like the term flexible day.
Mhm.
Maybe that helps that, like you say, if you don't watch it, kids are like, oh, I can take this day off. But
Yeah, no.
But one question in that discussion you guys brought up, while we're in hybrid, our percentage of kids that are still 100% virtual, is their Wednesday going to still cover them, or any concerns about how we're doing with our hours for those kids?
Right. So that is a big piece. And again, we haven't had any concerns because we're a 5-day-a-week school system where it wasn't a professional learning day. We still want to provide opportunities for them. And as Dr. Lockhart said, synchronous instruction isn't being on a video conference for 86 minutes. Synchronous instruction could be, you all are in my class right now, I'm going to post an assignment, and you all are going to work together on a Google Doc together on that, and you're working in synchronous with one another, sharing ideas, thoughts, and suggestions. That is still synchronous instruction, and that's still appropriate to make sure that our virtual students are getting that time as well.
Thanks.
Yep.
And I think that would help a lot. We're getting a lot of emails from parents who are saying, their kids are struggling with the virtual setting, right? The high school kids, they're typically, A and B students who are now failing. And they're struggling with getting the time with the extra time with their teachers because of the way it's set up right now. And if we could use Wednesdays as a big flex day, that you could focus on those kids who are truly struggling and need a little bit more direction and smaller group instruction from their teachers.
Right. Right. And President Savigny, it's also a day to get out of the way of some of our students that are self-motivated, that need to get things done because their teacher has been teaching bell to bell, and they don't get a lot of time to work independently. And this is another opportunity for them to do so. I see Devanshi shaking her head yes slightly, and it sounds like she may be one of those people at times.
Thank you all.
All right, board members, are we okay on that topic?
Yep.
And did we have anything else that we wanted to hit under the header of COVID-19 updates? No? All right, then we can move on to board member correspondence and superintendent updates. So board members, who would like to go first?
I'll go and be quick. I've had some May meetings. Most of the time has been spent trying to get with administrators and teachers and trying to get some feedback that's diverse and across the board, and talking to some families. And it's a tough time for everybody. And I want to just take a second of this part of the meeting and just say I want to thank everybody working. And I understand this is all new ground for so many of us, and it's tough. And I think, and it's tough on the families. It's tough on all sides. And I just hope we can somehow keep making this work. And so far, it's, what'd you say, Dr. Lockhart, how many weeks this hybrid been?
3.5.
3.5 weeks.
Probably have it to the hour, right? And it's been hard, but it's worked, and the kids appreciate it. And I know these high school kids, I hope we can, if we don't keep them back, we have a break and then get them back, because they really deserve to be part of it too.
Dr. Dorsey, do you want to go?
Sure. On the 15th of October, I attended MAVE's virtual 2020 conference, and I thank Devanshi for attending as well. I got, I think, to see her or chat with her that day, so it was good to see Devanshi in attendance. We had a keynote speaker that day who addressed the area of equity. There were marquee breakout sessions, workshops, a panel, And the day ended with a message from Dr. Salmon. And there was also the opportunity to network virtually with other board members. So that was our MABES virtual 2020 conference. On the 16th of October, I attended the virtual Education That Is Multicultural Council meeting. And during that meeting, Mr. Anderson shared equity implications and concerns with the hybrid model. And there was also some discussion on the equity protocol. November 5th, I visited Shiloh Middle School and spent most of the time with Miss Megan Shealy, who is an ELA teacher. She worked with 4 hybrid classes of 8th graders learning at 2 different levels. So I certainly thank Ms. Shealy for inviting me to her classroom and allowing me to see the hybrid model in action. I also thank Mr. Watkins for taking me to classes throughout the building, to Mr. Weaver for also welcoming me, and to the staff members who allowed me to visit their classrooms. And it was interesting to see the various ways that they made the hybrid model work for them. It was evident that everyone was working to make the model work for their students. It was a meaningful visit, and I'm grateful for the work of Shiloh Middle School staff members. And I thank Teresa McCullough for extending the invitation for us to witness the hybrid model in action. And finally, on November 9th, I attended the MABE Conference Planning Committee meeting, and the purpose of that meeting was to debrief our 2020 annual conference. And even though the meeting this year was held virtually, there were about 100 board members and leaders who attended the conference. And overall, the feedback was very positive, and we feel that the conference was successful in meeting the needs of board members. And I look forward to working with the MABE Conference Planning Committee and Program Committee again this school year. So thanks, board members, for allowing me that opportunity to represent you as I join that committee again.
Thank you,
And the
Dr.
MABE
Dorsey.
board.
Pardon?
And the MABE board.
Yes, and the board of directors. I go to a retreat on Saturday for our board of directors. Again, it's a virtual retreat.
Great. Ms. Battaglia?
I guess I must be a complete boring person for once. I had absolutely nothing from that.
Well, talk about your classes that you're working.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know, but yes, I am currently in college, UMGC, and I've been working towards my bachelor's for psychology major. I mean, it's, as a mom that shares a computer with a 6-year-old, it's very challenging. It's my computer, she borrows it, but it's been challenging. I'm working hard, and that's about all I can do right now is just try. It's a class every 8 weeks. So right now I'm in statistics. A couple weeks ago I had biology. So it's a little bit at a time. So in my class is currently hybrid. So I meet with my instructor 1 day a week for 2 hours, and that's it. That's all you get. So you know, it is challenging and to do any type of college work, schoolwork online. I've been doing it for over 1.5 years. So I did receive the email from Ms. McCullough regarding going to the school to visit the hybrid model. I have not had a chance to reach back out to her to go and visit, but I'm also being very careful about that because I know we really don't want outside visitors in our schools, so I've been very hesitant. So it's like, you know, I'm a mom, so I kind of see myself as a volunteer, but then I know I'm also a board member, but I still don't, I'm back and forth. So I do intend to reach out to Ms. McCullough regarding that. And I do thank our teachers for all the hard work they are doing. It has not been easy. And here we are, end of second quarter. So I wish everyone good luck for the next quarter. I know it's been tricky. So I hope everyone had a wonderful Halloween, and I hope everyone has a wonderful Thanksgiving and happy Veterans Day as well.
Ms. Herbert?
I'm not going to talk about what I've done because I am a stay-at-home grandmother most of the time there at the farm. But I did meet a teacher from elementary during elections, and she actually poured her heart out to me when there was a break in the line, and I listened to her, what her day was like. And I said, I hope we soon have a meeting and we can help this for her. So I didn't know her name. I know she's an elementary teacher, so I certainly hope that we have helped you now, and every teacher in the county for that matter, because I do understand it's not easy because I see classes every day at my house. So, but she was very genuine, and I certainly hope that we helped her out. Thank you.
Thanks. Devanshi? Devanshi, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Yes. Hello, everyone. On October 15th, I attended the May virtual conference, and the workshop and speakers were, of course, very enlightening and informational. On October 29th, I, along with sophomores and juniors from across the county, took the PSAT. This was the first time I had been back in the classroom since March, back in the school building since March, and it helped me and a lot of my peers better understand what in-person hybrid school would look like. For CCSGA, we're going to have some students go to the Maryland Association of Student Council's Fall Leadership Conference this week. So they're very excited for that. And alike to many students across the county, the past few weeks have kept me very busy with submitting assignments and the end of the quarter approaching. The first quarter of the school year was definitely unlike any other, and it came with its triumphs and tribulations. But hopefully we all, students, teachers alike, can take what we learned this quarter to make a more successful second quarter. I just really want to thank and applaud teachers, admin, staff, and students for getting us through this all together.
Thanks, Devanshi. And I just want to say, like Miss Herbert, we were out at the polls for the week and a half for early voting and election day, and I did have the opportunity to talk to many teachers and many parents who actually walked up and had. There are people that had some very nice things to say. There were some people that had some frustrations that they wanted to air, and there were people that had lots of recommendations, and thoughts. And I certainly appreciate all of those. And I was glad to hear, Ms. McCabe and Mr. Anderson kind of talking about, adjustments that we're making, that we're thinking about making for Wednesdays. The COVID-19 has been the just incredible gift that keeps on giving, right? It keeps throwing curveballs at us and making life really interesting, and we have to learn and adapt as we go. And I think that we've been doing a lot of that. And I do want to thank everyone that took the time to come up to talk to me individually out at the polls, because I think everybody's trying to make the best of just a terrible situation. So I just want to thank everyone, and I want to thank all the teachers and staff in the system. I know this has been, just want to say it one more time, this has been such a difficult time, and I can't thank everyone enough for the Herculean efforts that they're putting in. So with that, I will hand it over to Dr. Lockard for the superintendent updates.
Thank you, President Savigny. Just a couple quick things. I know we're going to do a recognition for Veterans Day here coming up, but as we've celebrated Veterans Day, I'm so appreciative of a lot of the efforts that we've seen from our schools. There's been a lot of really cool virtual presentations, recognitions, educational programs. Nothing beats, we know, in person, but our schools made a lot of effort to try to make that a part of what was happening in their schools this week, and I appreciate that. Coming up Wednesday, December 9th, we are again partnering with Carroll Community College and the Chamber of Commerce to hold a virtual manufacturing fair, and this is the third year for this event. It's a great opportunity for students in advanced design applications, technology design, and agri-science courses at our comprehensive high schools, and will also be shared with students through the career coordinators and school counselors. They have a keynote speaker, a CEO from a major corporation, and then breakout sessions, apprentice forums, manufacturing panel, digital fabrication lab, virtual tours. Pretty cool opportunity for our students coming up. And we always appreciate the partnership with the community college and the chamber. Another partnership I'm pleased to announce is that Carroll County Public Schools has formalized an educational partnership with the National Security Agency, NSA. NSA works with schools serving kindergarten through 12th grade to promote STEM and foreign language education. So professionals from the agency will serve as tutors, speakers, judges, and more to inspire students in CCPS to pursue advanced studies, promote career opportunities in STEM and foreign languages. And so we're excited about this partnership opportunity and all it will provide for our students. And finally, last month, it was my pleasure to announce that Hampstead Elementary School has been named a National Blue Ribbon School, quite an honor. I'm looking forward to the official awards ceremony, which are being held virtually over the next couple of days. But Friday is the recognition for Hampstead. So we congratulate, again, Principal Arlene Moore and all the students, staff, parents at Hampstead Elementary for earning this prestigious designation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lockard. And I think we have 3 recognition months or awareness weeks that we're going to read, and then we'll take a short break. Okay, so Mr. Kyler?
Veterans Day. Today we are commemorating Veterans Day, a time for us to honor the men and women who have served in the United States military. While our schools were not able to hold in-person events for this special day, many are hosting virtual tributes and participating in special projects such as creating care packages and learning patriotic songs. A special thanks goes to our community members and employees who have proudly served our country. And I think I'll just ad-lib a second. In these weird times, because like we couldn't do events, a lot of veterans events didn't happen. There's a lot on social media of guys posting photos and talking. And I've seen in this year, it just seems like more camaraderie between the different ages of veterans. You know, the Korean War guys came up and they kind of said, everybody forgets us, you know, and of course Vietnam, that generation got spit on at the time, but they're all seem to be coming together, and it's just so neat.
Thanks,
Thank
Mr.
you for
Kyler.
being a veteran.
Yes, thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service.
American Education Week. Next week, November 16th through 20th, we will celebrate American Education Week. This week gives us an opportunity to celebrate public education and honor those who are making a difference in ensuring that every student receives a quality education. We appreciate our dedicated teachers and support staff for all that they do for all of our students, especially during these challenging times.
November 16th through 20th also has been designated as School Psychology Awareness Week. This special week recognizes the important work school psychologists and other educators do to help all students thrive. This year's theme is the power of possibility, which conveys hope, growth, resilience, and renewal. Thanks to our school psychologists for the support they provide to our students and our families.
Okay. Thank you all. All right, we do need to take a short break for technical reasons, and so let's break for 10 minutes and or 8 minutes and resume at 8:20. All right? Thank you, everyone.
Are we all girls?